I was standing in the middle of a crowded airport, staring at a set of handcuffs, while the clock on the wall felt like it was mocking me. One phone call from my own parents transformed me from a grieving granddaughter into a national security threat. They did not just want my grandfather's money, they wanted to erase my existence before the judge could hear a single word of the truth. My name is Yvette Mason, and at 6:45 in the morning, the only thing standing between me and my future was a gray plastic bin and a TSA agent who looked like he had not slept since the Reagan administration. The air in the security checkpoint smelled of stale coffee, anxiety, and feet. It is a specific smell, one you only find in American airports before the sun has fully committed to rising. I was not just a passenger, I was a woman on a mission, and I was running a race against a clock that I knew was rigged. I grabbed a second bin, laptop out, place it flat. Do not stack books on top of electronics. I knew the drill better than I knew the back of my own hand, because I had spent the last 10 years flying for work, living out of a suitcase, navigating compliance laws and corporate structures. But today was different. Today, I was not flying for a client. I was flying for myself. And more importantly, for the memory of a man who was the only person in my bloodline who did not look at me like I was a bad investment. I unbuckled my belt. It was a simple black leather strap, nothing fancy, but as I coiled it into the bin next to my boots, my hands were shaking. Just a little, a tremor in the fingers. I clenched my fist to stop it. I could not afford to look nervous. Nerves trigger behavioral detection officers. Nerves get you pulled aside for a swabbing. Nerves waste time. And I had exactly 0 minutes to waste. My flight to Dry Creek was scheduled to board in 20 minutes. The flight duration was 1 hour and 45 minutes. That would put me on the ground at 9:15. Rental car pickup, 15 minutes. Drive to the courthouse, 30 minutes. That put me walking through the doors of the Dry Creek County Probate Court at 10 o'clock sharp. The hearing started at 10:15. I had built a buffer of 15 minutes. 15 minutes to save an inheritance. 15 minutes to stop my parents from erasing the last wishes of my grandfather. "Boots off, ma'am," the agent barked. I nodded. Slipping my boots off and placing them on the belt, I watched them disappear into the black mouth of the X-ray machine. My laptop followed, then my bag, my entire life, summarized in 3 plastic trays, sliding away from me. I stepped up to the body scanner. The floor was cold through my socks. Feet on the yellow marks, hands above your head. I assumed the position. The machine whirred around me. A quick, invasive burst of technology scanning for threats. I held my breath. I had nothing on me. No metal. No liquids over 3.4 ounces. No sharp objects. I was clean. I was just a granddaughter trying to get to a courtroom. But as the machine stopped and I stepped out, waiting for the generic, clear signal, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. You know that feeling when the barometric pressure drops right before a storm? It felt like that. The hum of the terminal seemed to dip in volume. The TSA agent did not wave me through. He looked at a screen that I could not see. Then he looked at me. Then he looked over my shoulder. "Step to the side, please," he said. "Is there a problem?" I asked. My voice was steady. I made sure of that. I am a compliance officer in my other life. I deal with regulations and auditors. I know how to speak to authority without sounding defensive. Defensive makes you look guilty. "Just step to the side, ma'am." I moved to the designated area, expecting a pat-down. Maybe the scanner picked up a button on my jeans. Maybe it was a random selection. I watched the conveyor belt. My laptop was sitting there, waiting for me. My boots were waiting. The clock on the wall read 6:50. Then I saw them. 2 officers were walking toward the checkpoint from the other side. They were not TSA. TSA wear blue shirts and look bored. These men were wearing the tan and dark brown uniforms of the airport police. They had strict haircuts, utility belts, heavy with gear, and eyes that were locked directly on my face. They were walking with purpose. They were not strolling. They were intercepting. My stomach dropped. It felt like I had swallowed a stone. They bypassed the line of passengers. They walked right through the gap between the metal detectors and the body scanners. The TSA agent stepped back, deferring to the higher authority. "Yvette Mason?" the taller officer asked. He did not ask it like a question. He said it like he was reading a label on a piece of evidence. "Yes," I said. I did not move. I kept my hands visible, down by my sides, palms open. "That is me." "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." The silence that followed was absolute. For a split second, the hustle of the airport died. The businessman behind me, who had been loudly complaining on his phone about a merger, went mute. The mother with the 2 screaming toddlers froze. Everyone was looking. In post-9/11 America, you do not stare at a celebrity. You stare at the person being pulled out of the security line by the police. I was being marked. I was being branded. In their eyes, I was no longer a fellow traveler. I was a threat. I was a disruption. "Reason?" I asked. I kept it to one word. I did not want to give them a sentence they could twist. "We have a situation that needs to be clarified regarding your travel today," the officer said. He stepped closer. He was in my personal space now, using his height to intimidate. "Please come with us quietly. We do not want to make a scene." "I am not making a scene," I said, my voice low. "I have a flight to catch in 20 minutes. Is this going to take long?" The officer did not smile. He did not frown. He just gave me a look that said my schedule was the least important thing in the universe. "Grab your items from the bin. Ms. Mason, we are going to the secondary screening room." I walked to the end of the conveyor belt. My hands were trembling again, harder this time. I shoved my laptop into my bag without putting it in its sleeve. I jammed my feet into my boots without tying the laces. I grabbed my belt but did not put it on. I felt undone, disheveled, which was exactly how they wanted me to feel. I turned around, holding my bag like a shield. "Lead the way." We walked back through the terminal, but not toward the gates. We walked against the flow of traffic. The officers flanked me, one on the left, one on the right. It was a perp walk. There were no handcuffs, but the implication was there. People parted for us like the Red Sea. I saw the looks on their faces: curiosity, disgust, relief that it was not them. I kept my head up. I refused to look down. If I looked down, I looked guilty. In my head. However, I was screaming. This was not an accident. This was not a random screening algorithm spitting out my number. This was precision engineering. I thought about the last 3 days. The funeral was a blur of black fabric and insincere condolences. My father, standing by the grave, checking his watch every 5 minutes. My mother, crying into a handkerchief that was perfectly dry, telling everyone how confused poor Grandpa had been at the end. "Let us handle the legal side, Yvette," my mother had said, patting my hand with fingers that felt like ice. "You are grieving. You are not thinking straight. We have the lawyers handling the probate. You do not need to fly out to Dry Creek. It is just a formality." "I want to be there," I had said. "You will just make it worse," my father had snapped, his mask slipping for a second. "You always complicate things. Stay in the city. We will send you the check when it clears." They did not want me there. They were desperate for me not to be there. And now, I was being escorted by police away from the only flight that would get me to the courthouse in time. We stopped at a nondescript door next to the family restroom. The officer swiped a keycard. The light turned green. He held the door open. "Inside. Sit down." The room was small, perhaps 8 feet by 10 feet. It was windowless. The walls were painted a color that was supposed to be calming beige but looked like old oatmeal. There was a metal table bolted to the floor. There were 3 chairs, also bolted to the floor. A large mirror covered one wall. I knew enough about interrogation rooms to know that on the other side of that mirror, the glass was transparent. I sat down. The metal chair was cold through my jeans. The 2 officers followed me in. The door clicked shut, and the sound of the magnetic lock engaging was louder than a gunshot. "Ms. Mason," the tall officer said. He took out a notepad. "We received a report concerning your behavior and intent regarding this flight." I stared at him. "A report?" From whom? We will get to that. Right now. I need your identification and your boarding pass. I reached into my bag. My movements were slow, deliberate. I placed my driver's license and my paper boarding pass on the metal table. I have done nothing wrong, I said. I went through security. I have no contraband. I have no criminal record. I am going to a probate hearing for my grandfather's estate. We know where you are going, the second officer said. He was younger, stockier, with a face that looked like he was trying too hard to be tough. That sentence hung in the air. We know where you are going. How did they know? The ticket was in my name. The destination was a small county airport. Unless they had run a full background check in the last 5 minutes, they should not know my business, unless someone told them. I looked at the clock on the wall. 7 o'clock. Boarding was starting right now. If I miss this flight, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I miss a court hearing. The consequences of that are irreversible. You need to tell me exactly why I am being detained. We are not detaining you. Ma'am, we are conducting an inquiry based on a credible threat assessment. What threat? I demanded. I am wearing a cashmere sweater and carrying a laptop. What is the threat? The report indicates that you may be in a state of mental instability and posing a risk to the safety of the flight crew and passengers. The words hit me like a physical slap. Mental instability. I knew that phrase. I knew the cadence of it. I had heard it my entire life. Yvette is a little unstable today. Yvette is having one of her episodes. Do not listen to Yvette. She is just being dramatic. It was my father's language. It was the weapon he used to discredit me every time I pointed out a lie. Every time I caught him in a contradiction. He weaponized my emotions. If I got angry, I was unstable. If I cried, I was hysterical. If I spoke up, I was manic. He had called them. My parents had called the airport. They had called the police. They had lied to federal authorities to stop me from getting on that plane. I looked at the mirror. I saw my own reflection. I looked pale. My hair was a little messy from the wind outside. My eyes were wide. To a stranger, I might look rattled. I might look unstable. I need to see the report, I said. I have a right to know who made this allegation. We are verifying the source now, the tall officer said. But until we are satisfied that you are fit to fly, you are not going anywhere. You are going to make me miss the hearing, I said. The realization washed over me. That was the plan. It was not about stopping me permanently. They did not need to arrest me. They did not need to charge me with a crime. They just need to delay me. If I am not in court at 10:15, the judge proceeds without me. My parents' lawyer will stand up and say, Your Honor, Yvette Mason was aware of the hearing but chose not to attend. We ask for a default judgment, and they would get it. They would get the house. They would get the accounts. They would get the land. And most importantly, they would bury the dispatch logs from the night my grandfather died. The logs that proved they were lying about everything. I gripped the edge of the metal table. The cold steel bit into my palms. I am calm, I said. I am rational. I am willing to submit to a drug test. I am willing to let you search my bag again. But I need you to understand that you are being used as a tool in a civil dispute. Whoever called you is lying to manipulate the court system. The officers exchanged a look. It was a subtle flicker of eyes, but I caught it. Doubt. Just a grain of it. Sit tight, Ms. Mason, the tall one said. We need to run your information. He turned to the door. Wait, I said. He stopped, his hand on the handle. My grandfather, I said. The words came out before I could check them. What about him? He was a watchmaker, I said. It was true, in a way. He tinkered. He understood gears. He used to tell me that the most important part of a story isn't the hero or the villain, it is the clock. The officer stared at me. He probably thought I was proving the unstable allegation. He said, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I paused, translating it for them, locking eyes with the man who held my freedom in his hands. He who controls the timing, controls the story. That is very poetic, ma'am, the officer said, dismissively. Don't leave the room." He walked out. The heavy door slammed shut. The lock engaged. I was alone. I looked at the clock. 7:05. The plane was boarding. The gate was closing in 10 minutes. I was stuck in a beige box with nothing but my rage and a profound clarity. My parents thought they had won. They thought that by stopping me here, they had cut my legs off. They thought that if I could not walk into that courtroom, I could not fight. But they had made a mistake, a fatal, arrogant mistake. They had put their lie on the record. They had involved the police. They had created a paper trail. I looked at the empty table. I did not have my phone. I had left it in the bin outside in the confusion. Or maybe they had it. No. Wait. I patted my pocket. It was there. They hadn't taken it yet. I pulled it out. No signal. The room was shielded. Of course it was. I took a deep breath. I was trapped. I was going to miss my flight. That was a fact. I could not change physics. I could not teleport to Dry Creek, but the story was not over. The timeline had shifted, but I was still in it. I sat back in the metal chair and waited. I needed them to come back. I needed them to document everything, because if I was going down, I was going to make sure that the anchor I dragged with me was heavy enough to sink the entire Mason family fleet. I stared at the mirror. "Okay, Grandpa," I whispered to the empty room. They messed with the timing. Now let us see if they can handle the story. The door opened again, admitting a slice of the terminal's chaotic noise before sealing me back into the vacuum of the interrogation room. The tall officer walked in alone this time. He held a tablet in one hand and a manila folder in the other. He did not sit down immediately. Instead, he stood on the other side of the bolted-down table, looking at me with the weary skepticism of a man who has heard every lie ever invented. He tapped the screen of his tablet, scrolling through a document I could not see. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. I did not break it. In my line of work, the person who speaks first during a pause is usually the one losing the negotiation. I sat with my back straight, my hands clasped loosely on the table, mimicking a posture of cooperative innocence. Finally, he spoke. "We have reviewed the initial intake form from the caller," he said. His voice was flat, reciting facts rather than conversing. "The report states that you made specific verbal threats regarding the safety of the aircraft and that you have a history of, quote, concerning emergency calls, unquote." There it was, the hook. I felt a cold flush of recognition run down my spine. It was not fear. It was the sickening familiarity of a script I had memorized against my will. Concerning emergency calls. It was a masterpiece of vague malice. It sounded official. It sounded dangerous. But it meant absolutely nothing specific. It was a phrase designed to bypass the brain's logic centers and trigger a pure safety response. I did not scream. I did not slam my fist on the table. I did not cry out that it was a lie. Because hysterical women are not believed in windowless rooms. Hysterical women are medicated or detained. Rational women are listened to. Sometimes. "Who made the report?" I asked. My voice was level, matching his volume decibel for decibel. "And what specific evidence was provided to corroborate it?" The officer pulled out a chair and sat down, the metal legs scraping against the linoleum floor with a sound like a shriek. The caller identified himself as a concerned family member. He stated that you have been exhibiting erratic behavior and that there have been multiple interventions in the past involving emergency services. "A concerned family member," I repeated. "Did he give a name?" "We protect the identity of reporting parties until a formal investigation is concluded," he said automatically. "That phrasing," I said, leaning forward just an inch. "Concerning emergency calls, erratic behavior, those are not police terms. Officer, those are narrative terms. They are subjective. I am asking you right now, what objective fact do you have that justifies holding me here while my flight is currently boarding?" The officer looked at me. "We have a duty to investigate credible threats. Ms. Mason, when we receive a tip that a passenger is unstable, we do not take chances. The report mentions you have a history of mental health crises that involve law enforcement." I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. The audacity of it was breathtaking. My father knew exactly what buttons to push. He knew that if he just said, "She is crazy," the police might ignore him. But if he said, "Police have been involved before," it created a phantom record. It made the officer wonder if I was a ticking time bomb that had just never exploded on paper. "Officer," I said, "I am going to tell you exactly what is happening. And I need you to listen to me not as a suspect, but as an investigator. I am flying to Dry Creek County for a probate hearing regarding the estate of my grandfather, Arthur Vance. The hearing is scheduled for 10:15 this morning. If I'm not present, the court will likely issue a default judgment in favor of my parents, granting them control over assets they are currently trying to liquidate." The officer blinked. He had expected a denial, not a legal briefing. "The person who called you," I continued, pressing my advantage, "is almost certainly Douglas Mason, my father, or perhaps my mother, Elena. They are the opposing parties in this hearing. They have a direct financial incentive to ensure I do not get on that plane. This is not a security report. This is an obstruction of justice tactic masked as a public safety concern." "That is a serious accusation," the officer said. "You are saying your parents swatted you?" "I am saying they weaponized your protocols to win a civil dispute," I said. "Think about the phrasing, officer. Concerning emergency calls, if I had a criminal record, you would see it on your screen right now. If I had been 5150'd or involuntarily committed, you would see a flag. Do you see a flag?" He looked down at the tablet. He did not answer. "Do you see a flag?" I asked again, firmer this time. "Your record is clear," he admitted, grudgingly. "But that does not mean the behavior is not real. Family often manages these things privately, and that is the loophole they are exploiting," I said. "They are relying on the fact that you cannot prove a negative, but you can prove a positive. Ask me the standard questions. Do it now. Put it on the record." The officer sighed. He set the tablet down and picked up a pen. "Fine. Let us go through it. Have you ever been arrested?" "No." "Have you ever been the subject of a restraining order?" "No." "Do you have any pending criminal charges in this state or any other jurisdiction?" "No." "Have you ever been hospitalized for a psychiatric episode involving violence?" "No." "Do you have any weapons, explosives, or prohibited items in your checked luggage or carry-on?" "No." "Are you currently under the influence of any narcotics or alcohol?" "No. I have had 1 cup of coffee at 5:30 this morning." The rhythm of the questions was hypnotic. No, no, no. With every answer, the invisible wall my father had built around me began to crack. The officer was writing it down. He was creating a new record, one that contradicted the phantom story in his tablet. "Okay," he said, capping the pen. "You are saying this is all a fabrication." "I am saying it is a strategic lie," I corrected. "And I can prove it, or rather, you can prove it." I pointed at the tablet lying on the table between us. It was a standard-issue ruggedized device, connected to the airport's internal security network and likely linked to the local dispatch system. "You have access to the call log," I said. "Not just the summary the dispatcher typed in. You have access to the raw data, the origin number, the timestamp, the audio recording of the initial call." The officer frowned. "That is procedural data. We review that later." "Review it now," I said. "Please, if I miss this flight, the damage is done. The investigation will conclude that it was a false alarm. But by then, the court hearing will be over. My inheritance will be gone. The caller knows this. They are counting on the delay, not the conviction. They do not need you to arrest me. They just need you to hesitate." He stared at me. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was looking for the crack in my armor. He was looking for the telltale sign of mania, the twitch, the sweat, the incoherent rambling, but I gave him nothing. I sat there like a statue carved out of ice and compliance manuals. "You are very calm for someone who claims their family is framing them," he observed. It was not a compliment. It was a probe, in his experience. Innocent people got angry. Innocent people cried. Innocent people shouted. "Do you know who I am?" "I am a compliance officer," I said. My job is to analyze risk and de-escalate structural failures. Getting angry does not get me on the plane. Giving you data gets me on the plane. If I seem calm, it is because I am saving my reaction for the courtroom. He looked at me for another 5 seconds. It felt like 5 years. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I imagined the gate agent at gate B12 picking up the microphone. Final boarding call for flight 492 to Dry Creek. Then, he reached for the tablet. If I pull the log, he said, warningly, and I hear anything at all, that sounds like a genuine distress call, you are going to be in that chair for the next 12 hours, and I will charge you with wasting police time on top of whatever else I find. Open it, I said. Play the audio. He tapped the screen. He swiped through a few menus. I watched his finger hover over a file. He pressed play. The sound was tinny, coming from the small speakers of the tablet. But in the small acoustic box of the interrogation room, it was crystal clear. Airport police, what is your emergency? The dispatcher's voice said. Then, a voice I knew better than my own heartbeat filled the room. Yes. Hello? I need to report a concern, a severe concern. It was my father, Douglas Mason. But it was not the voice he used when he was yelling at me about my career choices or my refusal to marry the son of his business partner. It was his public voice, the voice he used at charity galas, the voice he used when he was trying to get a table at a fully booked restaurant. It was smooth, performative, and laced with a fake. Trembling anxiety. My daughter is at the airport right now. She is not well. We tried to stop her, but she ran out. She has been talking about making a statement, about ending it all. She is in a manic state. I am terrified she is going to do something on that plane. The officer was watching the tablet, but I was watching the officer. Sir, can you give me her name and description? Yvette Mason. She is wearing, I think, a gray coat. She has dark hair. Please, you have to stop her. She has a history of this. We have had to call the police on her before when she gets like this. Just hold her until we can get there with her doctor. The recording ended with a click. The officer looked up. His expression had shifted. The hard, suspicious glare was gone, replaced by a furrowed brow of confusion. That sounded precise, he muttered. He said I was wearing a gray coat. I said softly. I am wearing a black blazer. He said I ran out. I took an Uber that I scheduled last night. I have the receipt on my phone. But that was not the clincher. I knew what the officer was thinking. The voice on the tape did not sound like a man in the middle of a crisis. It sounded like a man reading a script. It sounded rehearsed. There were no pauses for breath, no stuttering, no background noise. He mentioned a doctor, the officer said. Can you provide the name of your primary care physician? Doctor, Sarah Evans, I said immediately. You can call her. She will tell you I have a clean bill of health, no history of mania, no history of self-harm, no medication for psychosis. I leaned in. But listen to the end of the call again. The part where he says, just hold her until we can get there. He does not say help her. He says hold her. He wants custody. He wants control. The officer tapped the screen again. He was looking at the metadata now, the technical details that accompanied the voice recording. The call came in at 6:20. He read, from a mobile number ending in 4492. My father's cell, I said. Check the history. Did he call just once? The officer swiped down. His eyes widened slightly. There are 4 calls, he said. In the span of 10 minutes, 2 to the general information line, 1 to the TSA tip line, and 1 to us. He was shopping, I said. He was trying to find the line that would take the bait. He called until he found someone who would dispatch a unit. The officer looked at the timestamps. Call 1, 6:12, duration 10 seconds. Hung up. Call 2, 6:14, duration 20 seconds. Hung up. Call 3, 6:18, spoke to TSA. Call 4, 6:20, spoke to us. A panicked father does not hang up and redial different departments, I said. A panicked father stays on the line and screams for help. A man trying to plant a story tests the waters. He was rehearsing. He was checking which line had the shortest wait time or the most receptive operator. The officer sat back in his chair. The air in the room had changed completely. The presumption of guilt had evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard realization of bureaucratic manipulation. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. He saw the black blazer. He saw the calm hands. He saw the woman who had methodically dismantled a narrative that was supposed to destroy her. "This is unusual," he admitted. "Usually, these calls are messy, crying, screaming. This is calculated," I finished for him. He looked back at the tablet. He tapped a few more keys. "I am looking at the caller ID profile. The number is registered to a Douglas Mason. Address in the Uplands. That matches your next of kin info?" "Yes." "And you are saying there is absolutely no medical basis for his claims?" "None. Zero. If you pull my medical records, which requires a warrant. By the way, you will find cholesterol checks and an annual physical. That is it." The officer rubbed his chin. He was a cop, and cops do not like being used. They do not like being treated as private security guards for rich men with family vendettas. I could see the annoyance rising in him. It was not directed at me anymore. It was directed at the voice on the recording. "He lied to a federal officer," the officer said quietly. "Making a false report regarding aviation safety is a felony." "Yes, it is," I said. "And if I miss my flight, his lie succeeds. He uses your authority to strip me of my rights without ever stepping into a courtroom." I checked my watch. 7:20. "Officer," I said, "my flight leaves the gate in 10 minutes. You have seen my ID. You have searched my bag. You have heard the recording of a man who sounded like he was ordering a pizza, not reporting a suicide threat. You have the call logs showing he shopped for a dispatcher. Do you have any cause, any lawful cause, to keep me in this room?" He looked at the tablet one last time. Then he looked at the door. Then he looked at me. "Stand up," he said. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I locked my knees. "Grab your bag," he said. "We are going to walk you to the gate. Am I free to go?" "You are free to go," he said, his voice hard. "But I am keeping this file open because if what you say is true, Ms. Mason, then Mr. Douglas Mason has a lot of explaining to do, and I do not like being lied to." "Neither do I," I said. "Can I have a copy? The incident number? Something to prove I was here?" "I will print you an incident slip at the desk," he said. "It will have the case number and the timestamp. It will show you were detained for a security check and cleared. That should explain your delay to the gate agent." "Thank you," I said. He opened the door. The noise of the terminal rushed back in, louder than before. It sounded like music. It sounded like freedom. "Let's move," he said, stepping out into the hallway. "You have a plane to catch." I walked out of that room, leaving the ghost of my father's lies trapped in the stagnant air behind me. I had survived the first trap, but as I fell into step beside the officer, my mind was already racing ahead. My father was not a man who relied on a single plan. If the police stopped me, that was plan A. But if I got on the plane, if I made it to Dry Creek, he would have plan B waiting, and plan C. I gripped the strap of my bag tighter. The incident slip he was about to give me was not just a receipt, it was ammunition. My father had wanted to create a paper trail to bury me. Instead, he had just handed me the first shovel to dig his own grave. "Walk fast," the officer said over his shoulder. "I will radio the gate to hold the door if we get close." "I am right behind you," I said, and I was. I was right behind him, and I was coming for everything they thought they had stolen. The clock was ticking. But for the first time all morning, I felt like I was the one winding it. The fluorescent lights of the terminal hallway felt aggressive after the dim confinement of the interrogation room. We did not go straight to the gate. The officer, whose badge read Miller, steered me toward a high administrative desk situated just outside the security checkpoint's glass barriers. It was a podium of authority, cluttered with radios, charging docks, and a computer terminal that looked like it was running software from 2 decades ago. "I need to finalize the entry before I release you fully," Miller said, logging in. His fingers moved with the heavy, practiced cadence of a man who spent half his life typing reports. "And you wanted that incident slip." I stood on the other side of the counter, my bag pressed against my leg. "I need the full report number, Officer Miller, and I need to ensure that the preservation order for those call logs is entered into the system immediately. If my father calls back to correct his story, I do not want the original audio overwritten." Miller nodded, his eyes scanning the screen. "I am locking the file now. It is flagged as a malicious false report pending investigation. That stops the auto-delete cycle." He turned the monitor slightly. It was a breach of protocol, I was sure, but he was doing it to reassure me, or maybe he was just as disgusted by what he was seeing as I was. There, in stark black letters against a white background, was the name, Douglas Mason. Seeing it printed there felt different than hearing his voice. Hearing him was visceral. Seeing his name on a police log was evidentiary. It was undeniable. It was a fact that could be subpoenaed, printed, and stamped with a court seal. "He really committed to it," Miller muttered. He pointed a thick finger at the call history column. "Look at this. He didn't just call. He camped on the line." I leaned in, respecting the barrier, but needing to see. The log showed the timeline of his aggression. 6:12 a.m., call initiated, terminated by caller after 10 seconds. 6:14 a.m., call initiated, terminated by caller after 20 seconds. 6:18 a.m., TS a tip line. 6:20 a.m., airport police dispatch. "He was rehearsing," I said, the realization settling in my stomach like cold lead. "He was testing his performance. He called, realized he did not sound convincing enough, or maybe he got a dispatcher he did not like. And he hung up. He did it twice, then he tried TSA, and finally, he got you guys." Miller looked at me, his expression grim. "That is not panic. That is a script. People in a crisis do not hang up and dial again because they do not like the hold music. They stay on the line until someone answers. This," he tapped the screen, "this is intent. He wanted to make sure the specific buzzwords got logged." "Unstable?" I said. "Manic? Danger to flight safety?" "Exactly," Miller said. He used the keywords that trigger a mandatory stop. If he had just said, "My daughter is upset," we would have ignored it. But threat to safety ties our hands. I closed my eyes for a second, putting the pieces of the strategy together. My father did not just want me to miss the flight. If that was all he wanted, he could have slashed my tires or canceled my credit cards. No, this was about the hearing. If I walked into court today, assuming I made it, my father's lawyer would have asked me, "Ms. Mason, isn't it true that you were detained by police at the airport this very morning for a mental health evaluation?" Even if I was released, the question would plant the seed. It would paint me as volatile. It would support their narrative that I was too emotional to be the executor of the estate. Or worse, that I was mentally unfit to inherit at all. He was not just delaying me, he was manufacturing evidence for a character assassination. "I need to write a statement," I said, opening my eyes. "Right now, a voluntary declaration." Miller reached under the counter and pulled out a form. "Keep it brief, just the facts. If you write a novel, it looks defensive. If you write a list, it looks like a record." I took the pen. My hand was steady. I did not write about my feelings. I did not write about my grief. I wrote in the language of compliance and liability. I, Yvette Mason, am traveling to attend a probate hearing at Dry Creek County Court. I have no history of mental instability. The caller, Douglas Mason, is an opposing party in the referenced legal matter. The false report was made with the intent to obstruct my attendance at court and to generate prejudicial records against me. I request full criminal pursuit of the caller for filing a false police report under state and federal statutes. I signed it. I dated it. I pushed it back across the counter. Miller took it, stamped it with a heavy clunk, and scanned it into the file. Okay, it is in. This is your shield. Ms. Mason, if anyone asks, you show them the incident slip I'm about to print. It clears you completely. He hit a key to print the receipt. The printer whirred, but then he stopped. He was looking at the screen again, his brow furrowed. He squinted, leaning closer to the monitor. Wait a second, he said. I missed this part. It was in the supplemental notes box. The dispatcher added it after the call ended. What is it? I asked. My pulse spiked. Did he call back? No, Miller said slowly. It is a note about your carry-on. The caller, your father, he told the dispatcher that you were in possession of sensitive family documents. I froze. He claimed, Miller continued, reading from the screen, that you stole inheritance documents from the family safe and that you might try to destroy them or flush them if you were confronted by security. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Suddenly, the secondary screening made terrifying sense. They hadn't just been looking for weapons. They had been looking for paper. If the officers had found a stack of documents in my bag, and if the report said I had stolen them, they would have confiscated them as potential evidence. They would have tagged them, bagged them, and put them in a locker here at the airport. I would have been released. Yes, but the documents would have stayed behind. He wanted you to search my bag, I whispered. He did not care if I got on the plane, as long as I got on the plane empty-handed. Miller looked up at me. Do you have the documents? I have documents, I said carefully. But they are not stolen, and they are not what he says they are. Ms. Mason, Miller said, his voice dropping to a murmur. If you are carrying stolen property, that changes things. It is not property, I said, and it is not a will. My father lied about the nature of the documents to give you probable cause to seize them. He said I would destroy them. That is the inverse of the truth. I am the one trying to save them. He is the one trying to make sure they never see the light of day. I reached for my bag. Miller flinched, his hand going to his belt instinctively. I am just going to show you, I said, moving slowly. I am not reaching for a weapon. I am going to show you exactly what he is so afraid of. I unzipped the side pocket of my leather satchel. I pulled out a thin sheaf of papers. They were not parchment. They were not legal deeds with wax seals. They were standard computer printouts. Stapled in the corner, I placed them on the counter. This, I said, pointing to the header, is a computer-aided dispatch summary, a CAD report, from the Dry Creek Emergency Services. Miller looked at it. He recognized the format immediately. It was the language of his tribe. This is a 911 log, he said. From the night my grandfather died, I said. My parents told the family, and they are telling the court, that my grandfather died peacefully in his sleep, and that before he drifted off. He lucidly gave them verbal instructions to change his will. They say they were the only ones there. I tapped the paper. But this log says something else. Miller read the lines. His eyes widened. This says police were dispatched to the residence at 2 a.m. for a disturbance. He read. Exactly, I said. A disturbance, not a medical emergency, a domestic disturbance. My parents were not holding his hand while he slept. They were arguing with him. They were arguing so loudly that the neighbors called the cops. And look at the narrative line. Miller read it silently, then looked at me. Subject 1. That would be the grandfather. Was conscious and requesting removal of Subject 2 and 3 from the premises. Subject 2 and 3 are my parents, I said. They were not receiving his final blessing. They were being kicked out of his house hours before he died. This document proves that their entire story about his final wishes is a lie. If I get this into the courtroom, their case falls apart. If you had confiscated this because my father told you it was stolen, I would have walked into court with nothing but my word against theirs. Miller let out a long, low whistle. He looked at the papers, then back at the screen where Douglas Mason's name was glowing in the digital log. He tried to use us to launder the evidence, Miller said. He wanted us to do his dirty work. He figured we would seize the papers, hold them for verification, and by the time you got them back, the hearing would be over. He almost succeeded, I said. If I had been less calm, or if you had been less thorough, those papers would be in an evidence locker right now. Miller picked up the printed incident slip from the printer tray. He held it out to me. It was a small piece of thermal paper, but it felt heavier than gold. Take it, he said, and take your papers. Put them deep in your bag. I took the slip. It had the incident number, a P2026012804. It had the time. It had the code for unfounded report. You have verified the contents of my bag, I said, tucking the dispatch logs back into their protective sleeve. You are a witness that I possess these documents and that they are not stolen property. I did not see any stolen property, Miller said, his face impassive. I saw a passenger traveling with personal legal notes. That is none of my business. He tore off a second piece of paper, a sticky note, and wrote a direct number on it. If you get to court, he said, handing it to me, and the judge wants to know why you were late, or if your father tries to claim you were arrested, you have the court clerk call this number. It goes to the watch commander's desk. We will confirm everything. We will confirm the hoax. Thank you, I said. My voice wavered for the first time. You have no idea what this means. Go, Miller said, pointing down the terminal. Gate B12, you have 9 minutes before they close the door. Run. I did not need to be told twice. I grabbed my bag, clutching the strap until my knuckles turned white. I turned away from the desk, away from the police, and looked down the long stretch of the concourse. The moving walkways were crowded. The morning rush was in full swing, but I didn't see people. I saw obstacles. I saw time. I started to run. My boots hit the linoleum with a heavy, rhythmic thud. Thud, thud, thud. I was running toward a plane that might already be closing its doors. I was running toward a courtroom where my parents were currently smiling and lying to a judge, but for the first time since the funeral. I wasn't running away from their narrative. I was running toward it, and I was armed. I had the incident slip in my pocket. I had the dispatch logs in my bag. I had the truth. My father had tried to checkmate me at the security line. He thought he had cleared the board, but he forgot one thing. He forgot that when you strip everything away from a person, when you take their grief, their dignity, and their time, you don't leave them with nothing. You leave them with nothing to lose. And a person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in the world. I sprinted past the duty-free shop, dodging a cart. 6 minutes. I could make it. I had to make it. Because now, it wasn't just about money. It was about the look on my father's face when he realized that the police report he filed was the very thing that was going to destroy him. "Hold the plane!" I shouted in my head, focusing on the gate sign in the distance. "I am coming." Officer Miller walked me out of the security zone, and his presence acted like a battering ram through the morning crowd. 20 minutes ago, walking with the police had felt like a walk of shame, a public branding of my potential criminality. Now, the dynamic had inverted. I was not being dragged away. I was being escorted back in. I walked with my head high, my heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the terrazzo floor. Flanked by the uniform, it sent a message to anyone watching, though the only audience that mattered was the invisible one, my parents, who I knew were tracking my flight status from a comfortable living room 300 miles away. "You are clear to the gate," Miller said, stopping at the edge of the concourse. He did not smile, but he gave a curt nod. "Do not miss it." "I won't," I said. "Thank you, officer." He turned back to his post, and I was alone again in the ecosystem of the terminal. I checked the departures board hanging above the duty-free shop. My eyes scanned for Dry Creek, Flight 492. The status light next to it was not flashing boarding. It was not flashing delayed. It was flashing a solid, unblinking red. "See, agent?" My phone buzzed in my hand at that exact second. It was an automated email from the airline. Subject: Trip cancellation confirmation. Dear Yvette, per your request, Your reservation for Flight 492 to Dry Creek has been canceled. A credit has been issued to your travel wallet. The air in my lungs turned to ice. My father had not just relied on the police. That was the brute force attack. This was the precision strike. He knew the police might clear me. He knew I might talk my way out of an interrogation room. So he had executed a backup plan while I was sitting in that metal chair without a signal. He had called the airline. I did not stop to scream. I did not call the customer service hotline. Calling the hotline meant 20 minutes of hold music and a call center representative in a different time zone who would read from a script. I needed a human being with administrative override privileges, and I needed them right now. I scanned the terminal. The gate was too far. The gate agents would be busy boarding the plane and would not have the time to reconstruct a canceled itinerary. I needed the customer service center. I saw the sign. Customer assistance. Next to the food court. The line was 5 people deep. I did not have time for a line. I walked past the ropes. I ignored the glare of a man in a golf shirt who looked ready to protest. I walked straight up to the counter where a woman with silver hair and a name tag that read Patricia was typing furiously. "Excuse me," I said. "The line starts back there." "Honey," she said without looking up. Her voice was tired, the voice of someone who had been absorbing other people's bad days since 5 in the morning. "I do not have time for the line," I said. I did not raise my voice. I dropped it. I made it cold, hard, and terrifyingly precise. "I have a police emergency involving identity theft and fraudulent interference with a federal flight." Patricia stopped typing. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. She looked up. She saw the look in my eyes, not hysteria, but the deadly focus of a woman who had just stared down a cop and won. "Ticket?" she asked. I handed her my ID and my phone with the cancellation email open. "I did not cancel this flight. I'm currently standing in the airport, cleared by security, trying to board it. Someone else called you and impersonated me." Patricia took the ID. She tapped a few keys. The reflection of the screen flickered in her glasses. "System says you called 10 minutes ago," she said, reading the notes. "Verified by security questions. Mother's maiden name. First pet. Street you grew up on?" I felt a surge of bile. Of course. The security questions. The fatal flaw of modern verification. My father did not need to be a hacker. He just needed to be my father. He knew my mother's maiden name because he was married to her. He knew my first dog, a retriever named Buster, because he bought it. He knew the street I grew up on because he paid the mortgage. "I did not make that call," I said. "I was in police custody at the time that call was made." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Police custody?" This was the moment, the pivot point. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the thermal paper slip Officer Miller had printed for me, the incident report. The unfounded report stamp was still fresh. I placed it on the counter. I did not slam it. I set it down with the reverence of a royal flush in a high-stakes poker game. I was being detained by airport police because the same person who canceled this ticket called in a false bomb threat against me, I said. "This is the incident number. This is the timestamp. Look at the time I was released. Look at the time the flight was canceled. I could not have been on the phone with your agent because I was in a shielded interrogation room explaining to a sergeant why my family is trying to sabotage a court hearing." Patricia picked up the slip. She read it. She looked at the timestamp. She looked at her screen. She did the math. "Jesus," she whispered. "His name is Douglas Mason," I said. "He is my father, and he is trying to stop me from getting to Dry Creek. I need you to reinstate my seat. Right now." Patricia's demeanor shifted instantly. She went from gatekeeper to ally. The bureaucracy was no longer blocking me. It was now a tool I could use, provided I gave the right inputs. "The flight is closed for check-in," she said, her fingers flying across the keys. "But the manifest is not finalized. The plane is still at the gate. If I reinstate you now, you have 4 minutes to get on board." "Do it," I said. "I am overriding the cancellation," she muttered, narrating her actions. "Reissuing the boarding pass. You are lucky nobody snagged the seat when it went back into inventory. It is a full flight." I need something else, I said. Honey, you need a miracle to make that gate, she said, the printer whirring to life next to her. I need the record, I said. I need you to print the internal remarks from the cancellation call. I need the log that shows the caller ID and the notes the agent typed. Patricia hesitated. Internal notes are, well, they are internal. We usually need a subpoena for that. Patricia, I said, leaning in. This man just committed a felony by filing a false police report. He committed wire fraud by impersonating me to cancel this ticket. I am going to court today. If I walk in there without proof that he did this, he wins. Do not make me subpoena you. Just hit print. Help me stop him. She looked at me. She saw the desperation I was keeping tightly under wraps. She saw the police slip that proved I was the victim here. She hit the button. I will give you the passenger name record history, she said. It shows the modification log. That is the best I can do. That is all I need, I said. The printer spat out 2 documents. One was a crisp new boarding pass. The other was a sheet of dot matrix paper filled with codes and timestamps. Patricia highlighted a block of text on the second sheet with a yellow marker. Here, she said, pointing to the line. Caller, male, ID, verified. Stated passenger is unsafe to fly alone and requested immediate cancellation for medical reasons. Medical reasons, I repeated. He just does not quit. He sounded convincing to the rep, Patricia said. Notes say he offered to fax a doctor's note later. He does not have a doctor's note, I said. He has a script. I took the papers. I now had 2 physical anchors in reality. The police report proved he lied about my safety. The airline log proved he impersonated me to destroy my travel plans. 2 separate agencies, 2 separate lies, 1 common source. Patricia, I said, pocketing the papers. One last thing. Lock it. Excuse me? Put a hard lock on the itinerary, I said. Password protected, verbal confirmation only, face-to-face verification only, because the moment I turn my phone back on, he might see that the flight is active again and call back. Smart, she said. She typed a command. Okay, I have added a high-security flag. No changes can be made via phone or app, only by an agent at the airport with government ID verification. Thank you, I said. Go, she said, waving me off. Gate B12. It is at the end of the concourse. Run. I turned and ran. This time, it was a dead sprint. I did not care about my dignity. I did not care about the sweat forming on my back under my blazer. I clutched the 2 pieces of paper in my hand like weapons. I checked the time. 7:25. The door closed at 7:30. My boots hammered against the floor. I dodged a janitor's cart. I sidestepped a family of 5 blocking the walkway. I was a blur of motion in a world that felt too slow. As I ran, my mind processed the victory. My father had overplayed his hand. That was his weakness. He always thought he was the smartest person in the room. He thought that by layering the traps, police, airline, legal, he was ensuring my failure. But he had created a redundancy of evidence. If he had just done the police call, it would be his word against mine. But the airline call? That was fraud. That was identity theft. And by using the same medical/safety excuse in both places, he had tied the 2 events together inextricably. He had created a pattern. Judges hate patterns of abuse. Judges hate being manipulated. I saw the gate ahead. B12. The agent was reaching for the door to the jet bridge. The sign above the door was blinking, "Final call." "Wait," I yelled. It was not a polite request. It was a command. The agent looked up. He saw me running. He checked his watch. He looked at the door. I skidded to a halt at the podium. Breathless. My chest heaving. I slapped the new boarding pass onto the scanner. "Yvette Mason," I gasped. "I am here." The machine beeped. A beautiful green light. "You cut it close, Ms. Mason," the agent said, looking at me with a mixture of annoyance and relief. We were about to offload your bag. I had a security issue, I said, straightening my jacket. Well, get on board, he said. We are pushing back in 5. I walked down the jet bridge. The tunnel was cool and smelled of jet fuel. The sound of my own breathing was loud in the enclosed space. I had made it. I stepped onto the plane. The flight attendants were already closing the overhead bins. The passengers were settled, reading tablets or staring out the windows. It was a normal scene, a mundane Tuesday morning flight. Nobody knew the war I had just fought to get here. Nobody knew that I was carrying the seeds of my family's destruction in my handbag. I found my seat. 11A, window, my favorite. I sat down and buckled the belt. The click of the metal buckle was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I pulled out the papers one last time, the police slip, the airline log. I smoothed them out on the tray table. My father thought he had grounded me. He thought he had cut my wings, but all he had done was give me the fuel I needed to burn his entire kingdom to the ground. I looked out the window as the plane lurched backward. The terminal began to slide away. I was moving. I was airborne. I was coming for them. I took a picture of the 2 documents with my phone. Then I opened my email. I had one more message to send before we reached cruising altitude. But I would wait. I would wait until I was safely in the air. Beyond his reach. Beyond his ability to call another supervisor or file another report. The engines roared to life. A deep, powerful thrum that vibrated through the floor and into my bones. It felt like power. Ladies and gentlemen, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. We are number 3 for departure. We should be in the air shortly. I leaned my head back against the seat. I closed my eyes. Try to cancel this. Dad, I thought. Try to cancel gravity. The plane accelerated. The force pushed me back into the seat. We lifted off. The ground fell away. The airport, the police, the service desk. They all became small, insignificant toys below me. I was in the sky. And I was bringing the storm with me. The seatbelt sign pinged off with a cheerful chime that felt obscenely bright, given the darkness gathering in my stomach. We had just leveled off at cruising altitude, 30,000 feet above the chaos I had left on the ground. The cabin was filled with the collective sound of seatbacks reclining and tray tables unlatching. I did not recline. I did not relax. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. My movements sharp and mechanical. I needed connectivity. I needed information. I purchased the premium in-flight Wi-Fi package for $25. It was an exorbitant price for a connection that moved at the speed of a dial-up modem from the 90s. But I would have paid 10 times that amount. As soon as the connection icon turned green, my phone flooded with notifications, emails, Slack messages from work, and news alerts. But one notification stood out. It was from the court's automated docket system. I had subscribed to case updates the moment my grandfather died, a paranoid little habit that was about to pay off. Case number P4920. Schedule change alert. I frowned. A schedule change usually meant a delay. Courts were notoriously slow. Judges got sick. Clerks misplaced files. And hearings got bumped to the afternoon or the following week. I tapped the notification. Expecting to see a new date in February, the page loaded. Pixel by agonizing pixel. When the text finally sharpened, I stopped breathing. Hearing time amended. Motion for emergency temporary orders. New time. 8:45 ante-meridiem. I looked at my watch. It was 7:55. They had not delayed the hearing. They had moved it up. They had accelerated the timeline. The original hearing was set for 10:15. I was scheduled to land at 9:15. I would have made it with time to spare. But 8:45? That was in 50 minutes. I would be somewhere over the Midwest, trapped in a metal tube, while a judge decided the fate of my family's legacy. Panic flared hot and white behind my eyes. This was the second punch. The police report at the airport was designed to make me miss the flight. When that failed, or perhaps, assuming it would succeed, they had launched a parallel attack on the court docket. They wanted to ensure that even if I somehow miraculously teleported to Dry Creek, I would arrive to find the gavel already banged and the doors locked. I jammed my AirPods into my ears and activated Wi-Fi calling. I prayed the bandwidth would hold. I dialed the number for the Dry Creek probate clerk's office. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Probate court, clerk's office. This is Brenda. A voice answered. It sounded distracted, the sound of someone shuffling papers and sipping coffee. Brenda, this is Yvette Mason, I said, pitching my voice low to avoid alerting the passenger next to me, a man currently asleep with his mouth open. I am the respondent in the estate of Arthur Vance, case P-4920. I just received a docket alert that the hearing has been moved to 8:45 this morning. Is that correct? Let me pull that up, Brenda said. I could hear her typing. Mason? Vance? Yes, here it is. Emergency motion for temporary orders. Judge Halloway signed the order shortening time about 20 minutes ago. It is set for 8:45 in Department 4. On what grounds? I asked. My hand gripped the armrest. Why was the time shortened? I was served notice for 10:15. The petitioners filed an ex parte application, Brenda recited. Her voice bored. Citing, let me see, exigent circumstances regarding the safety of the estate assets and unavailability of the respondent due to incarceration. The word hung in the static of the connection. Incarceration. I am not incarcerated, I said. I am on a commercial flight. I am currently 30,000 feet in the air. I am on my way to the hearing. Well, the filing here says you were taken into custody by federal authorities this morning, Brenda said. The affidavit is signed by a Mr. Douglas Mason. It states you were detained for making terroristic threats at the airport and will be unavailable to attend court, necessitating an immediate appointment of a temporary administrator to secure the property. My father. He had not just lied to the police. He had sworn to that lie in a court document. He was betting everything on the idea that I was sitting in a jail cell without a phone. He thought I was silenced. He thought I was erased. Brenda, listen to me, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the turbulence shaking the plane. That affidavit is perjury. I was detained briefly due to a false report made by the petitioner himself. I was cleared. I was released. I am free, and I am en route. If the judge proceeds at 8:45 without me, he will be ruling based on a fraudulent premise. I cannot give you legal advice, ma'am, Brenda said, her tone tightening. She was a bureaucrat, and bureaucrats hate drama. I am not asking for advice, I said. I am asking for access. I cannot physically be in the courtroom in 50 minutes. I am requesting a link to appear remotely, video or audio, and I need an email address to submit a pre-hearing evidence packet for the judge's review in chambers before he takes the bench. Remote appearances require 24 hours notice, Brenda said. This hearing was rescheduled 20 minutes ago, I countered. I was not given 24 hours notice of the time change. Procedural fairness dictates that if the time is compressed, the appearance requirements must be relaxed. Unless you want me to file a complaint regarding due process violations with the Judicial Oversight Committee, you need to put me through to the courtroom clerk for Department 4. There was a silence on the line. I had used the magic words, due process, judicial oversight. Hold on, Brenda said. The line clicked. Terrible jazz music started playing. I looked at the time, 8 o'clock, 45 minutes. I minimized the phone app and opened my email client. The internet was sluggish, the loading bar crawling across the screen like a dying snail. I created a new email. Subject, urgent, evidence of fraud, /case P-4920 /respondent, Yvette Mason. I did not have time for pleasantries. I did not have time for, dear honorable judge. I needed to punch through the noise. I attached the photo of the incident slip from the airport police. I attached the photo of the airline log showing the cancellation made by Douglas Mason. Then, I switched to my messages. I scrolled back to a text I had received late last night. One I had ignored at the time because I thought it was just drunken bluster. It was from my father. Turn back. Yvette, if you show up, You will regret it. We will humiliate you. Don't make us do what we have to do. I took a screenshot. I attached it. I began to type the body of the email. To the Honorable Court. I am the respondent, Yvette Mason. I am currently on Flight 492. En route to this hearing. I am not incarcerated. The petitioner's claim that I am in custody is false. See attachment A. Police incident report, clearing me of all suspicion at 7:20 this morning. See attachment B. Airline records showing the petitioner impersonated me to cancel my flight. See attachment C. Threatening correspondence from the petitioner dated yesterday. The petitioner created a false security emergency to prevent my attendance. I respectfully request the court either delay the hearing until my arrival at 10 o'clock or permit me to appear via audio link immediately. Proceeding in my absence would reward criminal obstruction of justice. Respectfully, Yvette Mason. I hit send. The progress bar stalled at 50%. My heart hammered against my ribs. Go, go, go. The plane hit a pocket of air and dropped 10 feet. The passenger next to me woke up with a snort. The progress bar jumped to 100%. Sent. The music in my ear stopped. Department 4. This is Sarah, a new voice said. Sharp. No nonsense. Sarah, this is Yvette Mason, I said. I just emailed you an evidence packet regarding the emergency hearing at 8:45. Did you receive it? I am checking the inbox now, Sarah said. I heard the click of a mouse. Okay, I see it. Evidence of fraud. That is quite a subject line. Ms. Mason. It is quite a situation, I said. My father told the judge I am in jail. I am on a plane. The documents prove he orchestrated my detention to force this ex parte hearing. I will print this and place it on Judge Holloway's desk, Sarah said. He is in chambers reviewing the file now. But Ms. Mason, you should know that Mr. Gable, your parents' attorney, is already here. He is arguing that the estate is in immediate peril. He is lying, I said. The only peril is that I am about to land and expose them. I will ask the judge if he will allow a telephonic appearance, Sarah said. Call this number back in 10 minutes. If he agrees, we will patch you into the courtroom sound system. Thank you, I said. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I needed reinforcements. I could not fight a seasoned lawyer like Gable alone from a cell phone at 30,000 feet. I needed someone on the ground, someone who knew the history. I dialed Marjorie Klein. Marjorie had been my grandfather's attorney for 30 years. She was 70 years old, smoked thin cigarettes that she refused to give up, and had a mind like a steel trap. She had retired 2 years ago. But when I told her about the will contest, she had reactivated her license just for this case. Yvette? Her voice was raspy, instantly alert. Where are you? Why is the docket showing an emergency hearing in 30 minutes? I am in the air, I said. They tried to stop me at the airport. Police, airline, the works. Now they are telling the judge I am in jail so they can proceed without me. Dirty, Marjorie spat. That is sloppy, desperate, dirty work. Gable knows better. They must be pushing him hard. I sent evidence to the clerk, I said. But Marjorie, why the rush? Why move it up 2 hours? Why not just ask for a default at the normal time? Because they want a temporary special administrator appointed, Marjorie said. Her voice lost its rasp and turned cold. TSA status, it is a specific legal designation. It gives them immediate power to take possession of assets to protect them during a dispute. If the judge signs that order at 8:45, by 9 o'clock they can walk into the bank and empty the accounts. They can enter the house and clear the safe. They want the safe, I whispered. Exactly, Marjorie said. They know you are coming. They know you have something. They want to get legal title to the house before you land, so they can change the locks and bar you from entering. They want to sanitize the crime scene. I have the dispatch logs, I said. From the night he died. The ones you told me about? Marjorie asked. Do they show the timeline? They show more than the timeline, I said. I pulled the papers out of my bag. smoothing them on the tray table next to the empty coffee cup. Marjorie, everyone has been focused on the argument that Grandpa was incompetent, that he was confused, that my parents guided him. Right, Marjorie said. Undue influence. That is the standard claim. Look at the note on page 2, I said, reading from the document in the dim cabin light. Officer deviation notes. Reporting officer arrived on scene at 0200 hours. Observed subject 1, Arthur Vance, standing in the doorway of the master bedroom. Subject 1 was blocking entry to subjects 2 and 3. Subject 1 shouted to officers, "Get them out! They are trying to force me to sign." Marjorie was silent for a beat. Then she exhaled, a long sound of appreciation. He was not confused, she said. He was resisting. He was lucid enough to identify a threat and ask for police intervention, and he specifically identified the coercion. There is more, I said. The log says, officers separated parties. Subject 1 stated he wished to revoke all prior powers of attorney granted to Subject 2. Subject 1 requested officers witness his statement. Did they? Marjorie asked. Did they witness it? It is right here, I said, my finger trembling on the line. Officer Reynolds' recorded statement on body cam. Subject 1 explicitly stated, my daughter and her husband are to have no access to my accounts. I am amending my trust tomorrow. He died 4 hours later, Marjorie said softly. Yes, I said. He died before he could get to the lawyer. But this log, this proves his intent. It proves the new will they are presenting, the one dated 2 days prior, was something he was actively fighting against. Yvette, Marjorie said, that is not just evidence. That is a nuclear bomb. If that body cam footage exists, their will is not just invalid. It is evidence of attempted fraud. I have the incident number, I said. I have the log, but I need to get it to the judge before he signs that TSA order. I am 10 minutes from the courthouse, Marjorie said. I am driving fast. Send me the file. I will walk into that courtroom and object to the emergency motion myself. You are not the attorney of record anymore, I reminded her. I am an officer of the court, Marjorie said. And I am a witness to Arthur's original intent. I will cause a scene if I have to. You just stay on the line with the clerk. Get patched in. Do not let them silence you. Marjorie, I said. One more thing. What? The parent's lawyer. Gable. He filed the motion saying I was a threat. He signed the pleading. Yes. If I prove he filed a pleading based on a lie that he knew, or should have known, was false, what happens to him? He gets sanctioned, Marjorie said. Maybe disbarred? Why? Because, I said, looking at the time, 8:10. I want him gone, too. He is the one who drafted the fake will. He is the one who advised them to call the police. I want to take his license. Focus on the assets first, Marjorie commanded. Save the vengeance for the second act. Send me the file. Now. I hung up and forwarded the email to Marjorie. The flight attendant stopped at my row. She was young, with a bright, professional smile that seemed jarringly out of place in my world of legal warfare. Beverage? She asked. Coffee? Juice? I looked at her. I looked at the phone in my hand. The laptop opened to the dispatch log. The police slip on the tray. Water, I said. And do you have any napkins? Sure, she said, handing me a stack. Thanks, I said. I need to write down a timeline. She moved on. I spread the napkins out. I uncapped my pen. I had 25 minutes until the hearing started. Marjorie was on the ground. I was in the air. The judge was in chambers, likely reading the lie that I was a terrorist. I took a deep breath of the recycled cabin air. It smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. I dialed the clerk back. Department 4. Sarah speaking. It is Yvette, I said. Did you talk to the judge? He has the email, Sarah said. Her voice was different now, tighter. He read the police slip. He is not happy. Ms. Mason, not happy with me? Not happy with the affidavit saying you were in jail, Sarah said. He wants you on the line. Speakerphone, 8:45 sharp. Do not hang up. Do not lose connection. I won't, I said. And Miss Mason? Yes. He asked if you have a copy of the airport police report with you. I have the original, I said. Good, Sarah said. Because Mr. Gable just walked into the courtroom, and he looks very confident. I think he has no idea you are about to dial in. Let him be confident, I said, staring at the seat back in front of me. Confidence makes people sloppy. I held the phone to my ear, listening to the silence of the open line, waiting for the sound of the courtroom to click in. The race was no longer about miles. It was about bandwidth. It was about the integrity of a signal beaming through the atmosphere, carrying the only thing that could stop a theft in progress, my voice. I am here, Grandpa, I whispered. I am still here. The silence on the open phone line was heavy, a static hiss that connected me to a room hundreds of miles away where my fate was being decided. I had the clerk, Sarah, on the line, but the judge had not yet taken the bench. I had 5 minutes, maybe 7, in the legal world. 5 minutes is a lifetime. It is enough time to lose a fortune or save a legacy. I looked down at the tray table. The plastic was slightly sticky from a previous passenger's soda. But I did not care. I had spread out the dispatch log, the computer-aided dispatch report that Officer Miller had verified. I had read it once in the interrogation room to clear my name, but I had not truly studied it. I had used it as a shield. Now, I needed to use it as a sword. I turned on the overhead reading light. The beam was weak, cutting through the dim cabin, illuminating the dot matrix text. There is something brutal about a police dispatch log. It does not care about feelings. It does not use adjectives like loving or devoted. It uses codes. It uses timestamps. It strips human drama down to its rawest mechanics. My grandfather used to say that the truth does not know how to flatter. And he was right. My eyes scanned the header, I had assumed, based on my parents' story, that they had called 911 that night. Their narrative was always the same. They were staying with Grandpa Arthur. He had a medical episode. They called for help, but he passed peacefully before the ambulance arrived. It was a story of dutiful children caring for a dying patriarch. I looked at the line labeled Reporting Party. It did not say Douglas Mason. It did not say Elena Mason. It read, Caller, Henderson. Robert, neighbor. Address, 12 Oak Lane. I felt a jolt of electricity run through my fingers. Bob Henderson. He lived next door to Grandpa for 40 years. He was a light sleeper who watered his lawn at 5 in the morning. I moved to the remarks section. The running commentary typed by the dispatcher as the call progressed. 0212 hours. Caller reports loud shouting from the residence. States it sounds like an altercation, not a medical emergency. 0214 hours. Caller states a vehicle just pulled into the driveway. Black SUV. 0215 hours. Caller states 2 individuals are exiting the vehicle and banging on the front door. I stopped breathing. The timeline was all wrong. My parents claimed they had been there since dinner. They claimed they were sitting by his bedside reading him the newspaper. But the log said a black SUV, my father's car, arrived at 2:15 in the morning, after the shouting had already started. Who was shouting before they got there? I read the next line. 0220 hours. Unit 4 on scene. Officer reports subject Arthur Vance is at the window, verbally refusing entry to the individuals in the driveway. 0225 hours. Officer contact made. Subjects identified as Douglas and Elena Mason. Dispute regarding access to the property. Subjects claim they have medical power of attorney. Subject Vance denies. There it was, the smoking gun. My parents were not the caregivers. They were the invaders. They had arrived in the middle of the night, likely demanding he sign the new will, and he had locked them out. The shouting Bob Henderson heard was my grandfather fighting back. I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture of that specific block of text. I highlighted the timestamp of their arrival, 0215. I texted the image to Marjorie. The Wi-Fi bar hovered at 2 bars, then 3. The image whooshed away. Look at the arrival time. I typed, they were not in the house. They broke in effectively. Marjorie's reply came back instantly, as if she had been holding the phone waiting for it. This changes the burden of proof, she wrote. If they were not present during the hours before the death, and if their arrival caused a police response, they cannot claim he was in a lucid, calm state to sign a will at 3 a.m. They were establishing a siege, not a sanctuary. I went back to the papers. I was looking for something else now. If the timeline was a lie, then everything else was suspect. I shuffled through the stack of scanned documents I had printed at the airline lounge days ago. Mixed in with the new logs, I found a document I had glossed over before. It was labeled Codicil Number 3. A codicil is just a fancy word for an amendment to a will. My parents had mentioned it in their filings, dismissing it as administrative updates regarding charitable giving. I read the text. It looked standard. It established the Evelyn Vance Memorial Scholarship Fund for underprivileged watchmakers, a sweet nod to his profession and my grandmother. It allocated $50,000, but then I saw the clause at the bottom. It was in smaller print, easily missed if you were just skimming for dollar amounts. Condition of funding. This bequest shall be activated immediately upon the opening of probate. However, should any beneficiary named in the primary will attempt to obstruct, delay, or prevent the lawful execution of this estate through extrajudicial means, or fail to appear for scheduled hearings without medical cause, the entirety of that beneficiary's share shall be forfeited and transferred to the scholarship fund. I read it twice. It was an anti-obstruction clause, a terror clause, but specific. Usually, these clauses say, if you contest the will, you get nothing. This one said, if you obstruct the process, you get nothing. My grandfather knew them. He knew them so well. He knew they would not just fight in court. He knew they would fight dirty. He knew they would try to stop me from getting to the hearing. He knew they would try to delay, to hide, to maneuver in the shadows. By calling the police on me this morning, by canceling my flight, by filing a false affidavit saying I was in jail, my father had triggered the clause. He had just inadvertently donated his entire inheritance to a school for watchmakers. "Oh, Grandpa," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. "You genius old man." But there was still a piece missing. The codicil mentioned a master asset list, stored in a secure location as designated by the testator's private instruction. Where was the list? If I could not find the list, I could not prove what assets were at stake. My parents would just hide the accounts, empty the safe, and claim the estate was empty. A secure location, I muttered. I closed my eyes, drowning out the hum of the engines. I went back to the last time I saw him. He was frail, sitting in his leather chair, his hands trembling as he held a cup of tea. "Yvette," he had said, his voice raspy, "the most valuable things are never in the safe. The safe is where you put things you want people to steal so they stop looking. The real things, you put those in the time." "In the time?" I had asked. "Numbers," he had said. "Time is just a series of numbers that open doors." I opened my eyes. He had sent me an email. I remembered it now. It was months ago, maybe a year. It was a strange email, one I had filed away and forgotten because it seemed like ramblings. I opened my Gmail app. I tapped the search bar. My fingers flew across the glass keyboard. Search. Brave. The circle spun. The satellite connection struggled. "Come on," I urged it. "Connect." The results populated. Subject: "For the day you need to be brave." Sender: Arthur Vance. Date: November 14th, 2024. I clicked it. The email was short. "My dearest Yvette, if you are reading this, the vultures are circling. Do not let them scare you. They are loud, but they are hollow. I have not put the master list in the wall safe. The wall safe contains a decoy, a will from 2010 that gives them what they want. They will find it, and they will stop looking. The real list, and the wet ink original of my final will, is in the locker at the train station. The old one downtown, Unit 404. The code is not a birthday. It is the time I met your grandmother, 1842, 6:42 in the evening. If they try to make you disappear, let the documents speak. You are the only one who listens. Love, Grandpa. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. He had played them. He had baited them with a decoy safe in the house. That is why they were so desperate to get the temporary administrator status today. They wanted to open the wall safe, find the decoy will, and destroy anything else. They did not know the real will was sitting in a rusted locker at the train station, guarded by a code that only meant something to a man in love. I had the map, I had the weapon, and now I had the ammunition. I minimized the email and opened the camera app again. I took a photo of the email, cropping out the code. I was not crazy enough to put that on a public court filing. I just kept the header and the text about the decoy. Then I took a photo of the dispatch log again. Zooming in on the remarks about the argument, I went back to the email draft I had started for the court. Subject, supplemental evidence, urgent. I typed fast, my thumbs blurring. To the Honorable Court. Please see the attached dispatch log from the night of the decedent's death. Point 1. The petitioner, Douglas Mason, was not present in the home as a caregiver. The log shows he arrived at 2:15 in the morning, causing a disturbance that required police intervention. Point 2. The decedent explicitly refused them entry. This contradicts the affidavit of peaceful transition. Point 3. I am in possession of a codicil with an anti-obstruction clause. The petitioner's actions today, filing a false police report to prevent my attendance, constitute a direct violation of this clause. By trying to stop me, he has forfeited his claim. I am requesting the court stay all rulings until I land. The petitioner is attempting to seize control of a decoy asset while the true estate documents are secured in a location known only to me. See timestamps. The truth does not flatter. I hit send. The plane banked slightly to the left. We were starting our initial descent. The captain's voice came on, muffled and calm. Flight attendants, prepare for arrival. I looked out the window. The clouds were breaking. I could see the brown and green patchwork of the ground below. Somewhere down there was a courtroom. Somewhere down there. My father was standing in a suit, checking his watch, thinking he had won because the clock had run out. But he was looking at the wrong clock. I put the papers back in my bag. I did not zip it. I needed them accessible. My phone buzzed. It was Marjorie. I am walking into the courthouse. I have the log. I am going to make a scene. I smiled. A cold, sharp smile. Make it a big one. I texted back. I am bringing the rest of the storm. The battle had shifted. 10 minutes ago, I was a victim trying to explain why I wasn't in jail. Now, I was the prosecutor. I wasn't just defending my right to be there. I was bringing the indictment that would bury them. I put my headset back on. The line to the clerk was still open. Just a hum of potential energy. Sarah, I said. I am here, the clerk whispered. The judge just came out. He is taking the bench. Patch me in, I said. And tell the judge to check his email one last time. He has the iPad on the bench, Sarah said. He is refreshing it now. I waited. I visualized the courtroom, the wood paneling, the smell of floor wax, my father's confident, arrogant posture. Then I heard it, the sound of a gavel striking wood, transmitted through a cell tower, bounced off a satellite, and delivered to me at 20,000 feet. Bang. Department 4 is now in session, a voice boomed. It was Judge Holloway. He sounded old, tired, and irritable. Calling the matter of the estate of Arthur Vance. Ready for the petitioner, my father's lawyer. Gable said. I could hear the smirk in his voice. Your Honor, due to the urgent nature of the assets and the unfortunate incarceration of the respondent, we are asking for an immediate ruling. I took a breath. Actually, Your Honor, I said, my voice cutting through the static, loud and clear in the courtroom speakers. The respondent is not incarcerated. She is watching you. There was a pause, a beautiful, stunned silence. And she has brought receipts, I added. The game was on. The connection in my headset was a lifeline made of static and fragile digital packets. I sat perfectly still in seat 11A, watching the clouds drift by outside the plexiglass window, but my entire consciousness was projected into a room 300 miles away. I could hear the distinct, hollow echo of a high-ceilinged government chamber. I heard the shuffle of heavy files, the click of a briefcase latch, and the low, murmuring cough of someone in the gallery. It was an auditory landscape of my own potential destruction. "The court is in session." Judge Holloway's voice boomed. It sounded tinny through the phone, but the authority was undiminished. "We are here on an emergency ex parte motion filed by the petitioners, Douglas and Elena Mason, counsel. State your appearances." "Robert Gable for the petitioners, Your Honor." A smooth baritone voice answered. That was Gable. He sounded expensive. He sounded like a man who charged $600 an hour to dismantle families. "And for the respondent?" the judge asked. "Marjorie Klein." A raspier, sharper voice cut in. "Appearing specially for Yvette Mason, who is attending via telephonic link pursuant to the court's permission." "Objection," Gable said instantly. "Your Honor, the respondent is not attending. We have credible information that the respondent is currently in federal custody following a significant security incident at the airport this morning. A phone line could be anyone. We cannot verify identity." I gripped the armrest. My knuckles turned white. "Your Honor." My father's voice joined the fray. It was the first time I had heard him speak in the courtroom setting. He sounded devastated. It was a perfect performance of a grieving, worried father. It breaks my heart to say this. We tried to stop her. She was out of control. The police had to take her away in handcuffs. I saw it myself. She is not fit to be here, and she is certainly not fit to manage an estate. In handcuffs, the lie was so visual, so specific. It was designed to plant an image in the judge's mind that could not be unseen. A woman in cuffs is a criminal. A criminal does not inherit. "In handcuffs," Judge Holloway repeated. His voice was unreadable. "You witnessed this personally. Mr. Mason?" "I did, Your Honor," my father said. "It was humiliating. For the family. For her." "That is interesting," the judge said, "because I am looking at an email time-stamped 8:30 this morning from the respondent. It contains an attachment, a police incident slip from the Airport Police Bureau. Incident number AP 202-601-2804. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of all the oxygen being sucked out of the room. "Ms. Klein," the judge said, "does your client have the original of this document?" "She does, Your Honor," Marjorie said, "and I have a certified copy here on my table." "Read the disposition code into the record, please," the judge ordered. "Disposition code is unfounded." Marjorie read clearly. Narrative states, "Subject cleared of all suspicion. Reporting party provided false information regarding flight risk. Subject released without charge at 7:20 ante-meridiem." I could hear papers shuffling violently on the other side. Gable was scrambling. "Your Honor," Gable stammered. "My client. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding from a distance. The airport is a chaotic environment." "A misunderstanding?" the judge asked. His voice dropped an octave, losing its judicial neutrality and gaining a sharp, dangerous edge. "Mr. Mason just stated on the record that he saw handcuffs. This report says she was released 20 minutes after the stop. There were no handcuffs. There was no arrest. There was a malicious report filed to delay a litigant. We were just concerned for the community." My mother's voice piped up. She sounded shrill. "She was acting erratically. We have a duty to public safety." "Your duty to public safety seems remarkably convenient," the judge snapped. It seems your concern for the community peaked exactly 2 hours before a probate hearing where you are trying to seize control of assets. Tell me, Mrs. Mason, were you protecting the public, or were you protecting yourself from the reading of the will? We object to that characterization, Gable said, trying to regain control. The police report is hearsay at this stage. We have not had time to examine it. Then let us examine Exhibit B, the judge said. The airline log. I closed my eyes and smiled. The second punch. Ms. Mason submitted a transaction history from the airline, the judge continued. It shows a cancellation made at 7:10 this morning. The caller identified himself as Douglas Mason. The reason given for the cancellation was medical emergency and passenger unsafe to fly. My father started, but his voice faltered. Mr. Mason, the judge said, did you, or did you not, call the airline and impersonate the respondent to cancel her ticket? I called as her father, my father yelled. He was losing his composure. The cool, grieving facade was cracking. I called because she is sick. She is unstable. I didn't want her on that plane for her own good. So you admit you made the call, the judge said. And you admit you blocked her travel. And yet, here we are. The judge shifted in his chair. The leather creaked loud enough for me to hear it over the jet engines. Ms. Mason, the judge said, are you on the line? I took a deep breath. I channeled every ounce of professional detachedness I had learned in 10 years of compliance work. I did not sound like a daughter. I sounded like a witness. I am here, Your Honor, I said. My voice was steady. I am currently on Flight 492. I am using the in-flight Wi-Fi. I am not in custody. I am not unstable, and I am ready to proceed. Mr. Gable, the judge said, your motion asks this court to proceed in absentia because the respondent is unavailable due to incarceration. The respondent is clearly not incarcerated. She is present by phone. Do you wish to amend your motion, or do you wish me to deny it with prejudice? We request a continuance, Gable said. He sounded defeated. If the respondent is en route, we can wait. Oh, I am not just denying the motion for absentia, the judge said. I am looking at your request for a temporary special administrator. You wanted me to give your clients the keys to the house and the combination to the safe today, before Ms. Mason landed, to secure the assets, Your Honor, Gable insisted weakly. To loot the assets, the judge corrected. That is how it looks from this bench. Counselor, you filed an emergency motion based on a demonstrably false affidavit of incarceration. You tried to use this court as a locksmith to bypass a beneficiary. We resent that implication, my father spat out. Resent it all you want, the judge said. Motion for temporary special administrator is denied. The status quo remains in effect. No assets are to be touched. No safes are to be opened. No locks are to be changed. And Mr. Mason? Yes, my father said. If I find out that you or your wife have entered the property on 12 Oak Lane since the decedent's death, I will hold you in contempt. And speaking of entering the property, the judge paused. I held my breath. He was looking at the dispatch logs. The third piece of evidence, the one about the siege. I am reviewing the police dispatch logs from the night of the death, the judge said. Ms. Klein provided them. They paint a very disturbing picture of the so-called peaceful transition you described in your initial filing. That log is unverified, Gable shouted. It is raw data. It is a business record of a public agency, the judge said calmly, and it notes that the decedent asked police to remove you from the premises. It notes that he accused you of trying to force him to sign documents. That goes directly to the validity of the will you are trying to propound. We will explain that at trial, Gable said. That is a triable issue of fact. Perhaps, the judge said, but for today, for this emergency hearing, it goes to credibility, and right now, your client has none. The judge cleared his throat. Now, there is one more document Ms. Klein handed me before I took the bench. A codicil, number 3. I heard a gasp. It might have been my mother. They didn't know about Codicil 3. They had found the decoy will in the wall safe, the one from 2010. They didn't know about the amendment Grandpa had filed with the bank, the one Marjorie had kept. This codicil establishes a scholarship fund, the judge said. But it has a condition. I am reading Clause 4. Any beneficiary who attempts to obstruct the lawful probate process through extrajudicial means shall forfeit their share. What? My father said. That is not real. He never wrote that. It is signed, notarized, and witnessed, the judge said. And Mr. Mason, calling the airport police to arrest a rival beneficiary, canceling a flight to prevent attendance, filing a false affidavit of incarceration. If those are not extrajudicial means of obstruction, I do not know what is. Your Honor, this is an ambush, Gable yelled. We have not seen this document. You tried to ambush her with a default judgment while she was in the air, the judge roared back. Do not talk to me about ambush. Counselor, you played a game of timing, and you lost. The sound of the judge's anger was terrifying and wonderful. It was the sound of the system finally working. I am putting you on notice, the judge said, his voice lowering to a deadly calm. I am not ruling on the forfeiture today. That requires a full evidentiary hearing, but I am warning you, the court will not reward obstruction. If these allegations of flight tampering are proven true at trial, I will enforce that clause. I will strip your clients of every dime and give it to the watchmakers. We understand, Gable whispered. I want all records, the judge ordered. I am issuing a sua sponte order. The petitioners are to produce their cell phone records, text messages, and emails regarding the airport incident and the airline cancellation within 24 hours. If you delete a single text, I will sanction you until you are disbarred. Understood, Gable said. Ms. Mason, the judge said, addressing me again. Yes, Your Honor? When do you land? I land at 9:15. Your Honor, I can be at the courthouse by 10:30. We are not going to rush, the judge said. I want you there in person, fully prepared, and not exhausted from fighting off police and airline agents. I am continuing this matter to tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. This gives the petitioners time to read the police report they claimed didn't exist. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. And Mr. Gable, the judge added, tell your clients that if Ms. Mason encounters so much as a flat tire on her way here tomorrow, I am going to assume they slashed it. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, Your Honor. Court is adjourned. Bang. The gavel struck. The sound vibrated in my ear. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of the cabin. The passenger next to me was awake now, looking at me with concern. I must have looked insane, sitting in a window seat, gripping a phone, tears streaming down my face, shaking with adrenaline. Are you okay, miss? He asked. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I looked at the clouds, which were fluffier now, brighter. The sun was shining on the wing. I am better than okay, I said. I just bought myself a day. I looked at the phone. The screen was dark. The battle was over for the hour. But the war was just beginning. My father had played his ace, the empty chair strategy. He had bet everything on the idea that I wouldn't show up, and in doing so, he had exposed his own flank. He had put his lies on the record. He hadn't just lost the motion, he had lost the narrative. I leaned back against the headrest. I was exhausted. My body felt heavy, like the gravity of the situation was finally catching up to the gravity of the plane. But it was a good heaviness. It was the weight of ground under my feet, even though I was still in the sky. I thought about the locker at the train station. Unit 404. The real will was there. The dispatch logs proved the coercion. The airline logs proved the fraud. And tomorrow, I would walk into that courtroom not as a victim, but as the executor. I closed my eyes and let the hum of the engine lull me. See you tomorrow. Dad, I thought, and bring your checkbook. You are going to need it. I landed in Dry Creek at 9:25 in the morning, 10 minutes behind schedule, but a lifetime ahead of where my father wanted me to be. The air outside the terminal was cold and smelled of damp pine needles, a sharp contrast to the recycled antiseptic air of the cabin. I did not go to my grandfather's house. I knew better than to walk into a crime scene that was currently occupied by the perpetrators. Instead, I checked into a generic business hotel near the courthouse, the kind of place where the carpet patterns are designed to hide stains and the coffee in the lobby is always lukewarm. I did not unpack. I took the folder containing the dispatch logs, the police incident slip, and the airline printouts, and I placed it on the nightstand next to the hotel phone. When I finally lay down, I slept with one hand resting on the cover, my fingers curling over the edge of the paper. It was a childish instinct, like a kid clutching a teddy bear. But in my world, that folder was the only thing protecting me from being erased. I woke up every hour, checking to make sure the documents had not turned into ash or been replaced by a blank notepad. They were my talisman, as long as I had the paper trail. I existed. The next morning broke gray and steel hard. I met Marjorie Klein at a diner across from the courthouse at 7:30. She looked exactly as I remembered her from my childhood. Only now the lines around her mouth were deeper, etched by decades of listening to families tear each other apart over china sets and mutual funds. She was wearing a tweed suit that looked like armor, and she was smoking a cigarette outside the front door despite the heavy "no smoking" sign 3 feet away. "You look like hell, Yvette," she said, crushing the cigarette under her heel as I approached. "I feel like a target," I said. "Did you get the order?" "I got it," Marjorie said, handing me a fresh document. "Judge Holloway filed it late last night. It is a protective order regarding procedural motions. Basically, he is tired of your father's games. From this moment on, any emergency request filed by the petitioners must be served to us with 4 hours of notice, and they have to provide proof of receipt. No more sneaking into chambers while you are at 30,000 feet. That stops the ambushes," I said, reading the order. "But it does not stop the lies." "We stop the lies with paper," Marjorie said. "We need to solidify the record. The judge believed you yesterday because he was angry. Today, he is going to want the certified proof. He is going to want the ink dry." We spent the next 2 hours conducting a forensic audit of the previous 24 hours. It was not the dramatic courtroom shouting match of television dramas. It was the quiet, tedious, surgical work of building a wall that no amount of weeping or family sentiment could breach. First, we went to the airport police station. It was a small satellite office near the baggage claim. I needed the official, finalized version of the incident report. The slip Officer Miller had given me was a provisional receipt. I needed the full case file. The desk sergeant looked at me with bored recognition. "You are the one from yesterday," he said. "The flight risk?" "I am the one who was swatted," I corrected him. "I need the full narrative." He printed it out. It was 3 pages long. It was beautiful in its dryness. It listed the time of the call, the specific allegations. Subject claims daughter is manic. Subject claims possession of stolen documents. And then, the glorious conclusion: subject stopped, identification verified, search negative for stolen property. Subject displayed calm demeanor, reporting parties' claims unsubstantiated, cleared for travel. "This proves they lied to the police," Marjorie said, tucking it into her briefcase. "But we need to prove they lied to the airline. That is the fraud. That is the identity theft." "I have the printout from the counter," I said. "We need the recording," Marjorie said. "Or a transcript." The judge ordered them to produce their phone records. "But they will drag their feet. They will redact. They will claim privilege. We need to get it from the source." We called the airline's corporate legal department. It was a long shot. Usually, getting a corporation to release internal data without a subpoena takes 6 months. But I used the language of my trade. I did not ask for a favor. I reported a security breach. "This is Yvette Mason," I told the legal representative. "I am reporting a fraudulent impersonation of a passenger that resulted in a financial loss and a security lockdown. I have an active police case number. If you do not preserve and release the call data involving the cancellation of my ticket, I will be forced to name the airline as a co-defendant in a suit regarding negligence in identity verification. The tone on the other end changed instantly. We will flag the file for immediate review, the rep said. If there is a police number, we can release a summary of the interaction to the victim. Send it, I said. Today. But while I was waiting for that victory, my phone buzzed with a notification that made my blood run cold. It was not from the court. It was not from Marjorie. It was from Havenport Compliance Group, my employer. Subject: Urgent. HR. Inquiry regarding personal conduct. I stopped walking in the middle of the courthouse plaza. Marjorie bumped into my shoulder. "What is it?" she asked. "They didn't just call the police," I whispered, staring at the screen. "They called my job." I opened the email. It was from the Director of Human Resources. "Dear Yvette, we received a concerning communication this morning regarding your current status. A family member contacted our main line alleging that you are currently undergoing a severe mental health crisis and have been detained by law enforcement. They expressed concern about your access to sensitive client data. Given your instability, please contact us immediately to clarify your status." I felt a wave of nausea. This was the nuclear option. My father knew that my career was built on trust. I handled compliance for billion-dollar companies. If there was even a whisper that I was unstable or detained, my security clearance could be pulled. I could be suspended. He was trying to starve me out. He was trying to destroy my ability to fund this legal fight. "He called my boss," I said, my voice trembling with a rage that felt hotter than anything I had felt before. "He told them I am crazy. He tried to get me fired." Marjorie looked at the email. Her eyes narrowed. "Good," she said. "Good?" I looked at her like she was insane. "How is this good? He is torching my reputation." "He is overreaching," Marjorie said. "He is drunk on power. He thinks he can bully the world like he bullied your grandfather, but he just made a tactical error. He involved a third party, a corporate third party. That turns a family dispute into tortious interference with a business contract." She pointed at my phone. "Reply now. Do not be emotional. Be a compliance officer." I took a breath. She was right. I typed the reply standing right there on the pavement. To Director of HR, from Yvette Mason, false allegations/legal harassment. The communication you received is a malicious fabrication orchestrated by an opposing party in an active probate litigation. I am not in custody. I am not unstable. I am currently at the Dry Creek County Courthouse. Attached is the police incident report from yesterday clearing me of these exact allegations. Attached is the court order from Judge Holloway admonishing the caller for these false reports. Please consider this formal notice that the caller is attempting to use Havenport Compliance Group as a tool for harassment. I recommend blocking further communication from this individual to limit liability. I will be back in the office on Thursday. I hit send. "That is done," I said, pocketing the phone. "But Marjorie, they are attacking everything. They are attacking the money, the travel, the job. They are trying to suffocate me." "That is because they are terrified," Marjorie said. "You only fire every gun you have when you know the enemy is getting over the wall. Now, let us go see what the airline sent." We went into the law library to use a computer with a printer. The email from the airline legal team had arrived. It was not the audio, that would take days, but it was a loss prevention summary, and it contained a twist I had not expected. I read the notes from the agent who had taken the cancellation call. Caller verification passed. Caller provided PNR, full name, D.O.B., an answer to security question, first pet. Note: caller attempted to answer security question, mother's maiden name, before prompt was finished. Caller appeared to be reading from a profile. "He was reading," I said. "He wasn't just recalling it. He had a cheat sheet." But then I saw the second note, appended by a supervisor. System alert. The IP address used to access the flight details prior to the call matches an IP address that logged into the account Elena Mason frequent flyer profile 3 minutes earlier. "My mother," I said. "She was logged into her own account. probably checking her own miles or booking her own flight back, and then she switched to my account to get the details for my dad to call. They were in it together, Marjorie said. Conspiracy. It wasn't just Douglas acting alone. Elena provided the technical access. That implicates both of them. If we prove conspiracy to commit fraud, we can pierce the veil on everything. We can get their joint texts. We can get their spousal communications. We have them, I said. We have enough to wound them, Marjorie corrected. But to kill the beast, we need the heart. We need the will. I know where the will is, I said. Locker 404. But Marjorie, there is something else in the dispatch logs. Something I haven't shown the judge yet. I sent him the timeline, but I didn't highlight the specific quote. I pulled the dispatch log out of the folder again. I ran my finger down to the bottom of page 2, to the section labeled Officer Observations, Incident Detail. Most people stop reading after the main narrative, but in my line of work, the devil is always in the footnotes. Read this, I said, pointing to the line. Marjorie put on her reading glasses. She squinted at the text. Officer note. Upon separating the parties, Subject 2, Douglas Mason, was observed holding a blue folder. When asked about the folder, Subject stated it contained medical directives. Subject 1, Arthur Vance, shouted from the bedroom, "That is not medical. That is the draft. Put it back." Marjorie looked up. They stole a draft? Keep reading, I said. Officer note. Subject 2 refused to hand over the folder to officers, claiming attorney-client privilege. Officer did not seize, as it was a civil matter. However, body camera footage at marker 0232 captures the label on the folder. Label reads, Revocation of Trust, Draft January 26. January 26, Marjorie whispered. That was the day he died. He drafted a revocation that day. My father walked out of that house with the revocation document in his hand, I said. He stole the paper that proved my grandfather was cutting them out. He told the police it was medical records. He lied to the officer's face, and the camera saw the label. This proves spoliation of evidence, Marjorie said. Her voice was trembling with excitement. They didn't just forge a new will. They physically removed and likely destroyed the revocation of the old one. If we get that body cam footage, we don't need the footage to make them sweat, I said. We just need them to know that we know it exists. You want to trap them, Marjorie realized. I want to ask my father, under oath, if he removed any documents from the house that night, I said. I want him to say no. I want him to commit perjury on the stand, and then I want to play the video. That is high risk, Marjorie said. If the video is blurry, if the label isn't clear, it is clear enough for the officer to write it down, I said. The cop saw it. The cop wrote it. That log is the hammer. I closed the folder. The aftermath phase was over. We weren't just gathering scraps anymore. We were building a guillotine. We go into court tomorrow, I said. We present the airline fraud. We present the HR harassment. We show the judge that they are obstructing justice in real time. We get the credibility ruling. And the dispatch note? Marjorie asked. We keep it in the pocket, I said. We wait until he takes the stand. We wait until he thinks he has explained away the airport call as a misunderstanding. We let him get comfortable. I looked at the courthouse across the street. It was a massive stone building, designed to look imposing, to make people feel small. But I didn't feel small. I felt like I was the only person in the county who knew what time it really was. Grandpa left the code in the locker, I said, but he left the real trap in the police report. He knew they would try to take the papers. He knew they would be greedy. He made sure the cops saw them do it. He was playing three-dimensional chess while they were playing checkers, Marjorie said. And now, I said, picking up my coffee. It is my turn to move. I checked my watch. 11 o'clock. We had 22 hours until the hearing resumed. 22 hours to prepare. 22 hours for my parents to make one more mistake. Let's go, I said. I want to draft a subpoena for that body camera footage. Even if we don't get it in time for tomorrow, I want the request on the docket. I want them to see the notification and know that the eye of God is coming for them." Marjorie smiled, a shark-like grin that showed all her teeth. "I love it when you talk procedural," she said. We walked back toward the legal library. The wind at our backs, the folder under my arm felt heavier now. But it wasn't a burden, it was the weight of a promise kept. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to make sure that when the history of the Vance family was written, the last chapter wouldn't be a lie. The courtroom in Department 4 was smaller than I expected. It smelled of lemon wood polish and old carpet, a scent that I would forever associate with the dismantling of my family. I sat at the defendant's table next to Marjorie, my hands folded on top of the black binder that contained every shred of evidence I had gathered in the last 24 hours. My parents were sitting 10 feet away at the plaintiff's table. My father, Douglas, was wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my first car. He refused to look at me. My mother, Elena, was staring at a spot on the wall above the judge's head, her face a mask of tragic suffering. They looked like the perfect picture of grieving, concerned parents, but the air around them felt radioactive. Judge Holloway took the bench at 9 o'clock sharp. He looked different in person than he had on the tiny screen of the court clerk's iPad. He was imposing, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to have seen every variation of human greed imaginable. "We are back on the record," Judge Holloway said. "Estate of Arthur Vance. When we left off yesterday, there were questions regarding the respondent's ability to appear. I see Ms. Mason is present." "She is, Your Honor," Marjorie said, standing up. "And we are ready to proceed on the issue of the temporary special administrator." Mr. Gable, my parents' lawyer, stood up slowly. He adjusted his cufflinks. He looked like a man who had spent the night trying to build a castle out of sand while the tide was coming in. "Your Honor," Gable began, his voice smooth and practiced, "we withdraw our motion regarding the respondent's absence. However, the core issue remains. The estate is in peril. We have significant concerns regarding the validity of the most recent testamentary documents. It is our position that the decedent, Arthur Vance, was subject to undue influence and manipulation by the respondent, Yvette Mason, in the final weeks of his life." I felt a muscle twitch in my jaw. Undue influence. It was the classic pivot. When you cannot stop the person from showing up, you attack their character. They were claiming I had brainwashed Grandpa. "Mr. Gable," the judge said, leaning back, "that is a trial issue. We are here for a preliminary hearing on who manages the assets right now." "It goes to fitness, Your Honor," Gable insisted. "If the respondent manipulated a dying man to change his will, she certainly cannot be trusted to administer the estate. We believe Mr. Vance was confused, isolated, and coerced into drafting documents that did not reflect his true wishes. We have testimony prepared that states Miss Mason was constantly whispering in his ear, poisoning him against his natural heirs." Marjorie did not object. She just picked up a piece of paper from our table. It was the dispatch log. "Your Honor," Marjorie said, her voice dry and rasping slightly, "counsel speaks of isolation and coercion occurring on the night of death. He claims my client was the one whispering in the decedent's ear. I would like to direct the court's attention to the timeline established by the Dry Creek Emergency Services." She walked to the podium. "The petitioner claims Ms. Mason was the one influencing the decedent," Marjorie continued. "But flight records and cell tower triangulation show that on the night of January 26th, Yvette Mason was in New York City, 300 miles away. She was not in the room. She was not in the house. She was not even in the state." Marjorie paused, letting that sink in. "However," she said, lifting the dispatch log like a weapon, "do you know who was at the house? Do you know who was isolating the decedent? The petitioners, Douglas and Elena Mason." "That is standard family visitation," Gable interrupted. "They were comforting a dying man." "Let us look at the comfort they provided," Marjorie said. I am reading from the officer's field notes. Time stamped 02:20 in the morning. Note: adult male attempted to restrict access to patient, argument overheard regarding documents, and further down, decedent shouting for subjects to leave the premises. The courtroom went silent. Your Honor, Marjorie said, turning to the judge. Undue influence requires opportunity. My client was in another state. The petitioners, on the other hand, were in the room, and according to the police who responded to the scene, they were actively restricting access to the patient and arguing about paperwork while the man was dying. If there was any manipulation happening that night, it was not coming from Yvette Mason. My father shifted in his seat. He whispered something furiously to Gable. Gable stood up, trying to regain the offensive. Your Honor, this is a misinterpretation of a chaotic medical emergency. People shout when they are stressed, but if we are talking about behavior, we must address Ms. Mason's instability. We have text messages. He pulled a stack of enlarged screenshots from his briefcase. These are messages sent from Yvette Mason to her father 2 days before the death, Gable said, waving the paper. In these texts, she sounds paranoid, aggressive. Listen to this one. If you touch him, I will burn it all down. And another. I am watching you every second. These are not the words of a rational executor. These are threats. The judge frowned. Let me see those. Gable handed them up. They looked damning. Out of context. I sounded like a stalker. Marjorie stood up again. She did not look worried. She looked bored. Rule of completeness, Your Honor, she said. Counsel has provided selected snippets. He has cropped the images to remove the messages Yvette was responding to. She handed a thick packet to the bailiff. Here is the full thread, downloaded directly from the carrier's server this morning. The judge took the new packet. He flipped the page. Mr. Gable read the reply. If you touch him, I will burn it all down, the judge said, reading from the new sheet. But he omitted the text from Douglas Mason that preceded it. Mr. Mason wrote, We are moving him to a memory care facility tomorrow, whether he likes it or not. The house is being listed. You have no say. And Miss Mason replied, He is lucid. He does not want to go. If you touch him, I will burn it all down. Meaning, presumably, the legal arrangement. The judge looked over his glasses at Gable. Context matters. Counselor, one sounds like a physical threat. The other sounds like a daughter protecting her father from being involuntarily committed to a nursing home against his will. It still shows hostility, Gable said weakly. It shows a dispute, the judge corrected. A dispute that you are trying to frame as mental illness. I decided it was time. I touched Marjorie's arm. She nodded. Your Honor, I said, speaking up. May I address the court regarding the pattern of conduct? You may, the judge said. I stood up. My legs felt solid. I wasn't shaking anymore. Mr. Gable wants to talk about stability, I said. He wants to talk about trust, but I asked the court to look at the last 24 hours as a single, continuous operation. It is not a series of accidents. It is a system. I held up one finger. Step 1, I said. 6:20 in the morning. My father calls the airport police. He lies and says I am a threat to flight safety. Goal, detain me. I held up a second finger. Step 2, I said. 7:10 in the morning. My father impersonates me and calls the airline to cancel my ticket. Goal, ground me if the police fail. I held up a third finger. Step 3, I said. 8 o'clock in the morning. Counsel files an emergency motion to move this hearing up by 2 hours. Goal, ensure I am in the air and unable to respond. I held up a fourth finger. Step 4, I said. 8:30 in the morning. Counsel files an affidavit stating I am incarcerated, knowing full well I was released. Goal, obtain a default judgment. I lowered my hand and looked directly at my father. This is not concern for my mental health, I said. This is a coordinated, multi-layered attack on the judicial process. They use the police as a weapon. They used the airline as a weapon. And yesterday, Your Honor, they tried to use you as a weapon. The judge turned his chair to face the plaintiffs. His expression was not angry anymore. It was icy. Mr. Mason? The judge said. My father stood up. Your Honor, I have a question, the judge said. It is a simple question. In your call to the airport police, the recording of which I have now listened to, you stated that your daughter was a danger to the public and might cause a scene on the plane. Yes, my father said. I was terrified she would hurt someone. If your concern was public safety, the judge asked, and if your fear was that she would commit violence on an aircraft, why did you specifically mention to the dispatcher that she was traveling for a probate dispute? My father blinked. I wanted to give them context. No, the judge said. Context is, she is off her meds. Context is, she has a weapon. Mentioning a probate dispute suggests that your concern wasn't about the plane. It was about where the plane was going. I just wanted her to be safe, my father blurted out. I wanted her to be somewhere safe and calm so we could handle this business without her exploding. We just wanted her calm before the hearing. The courtroom went deadly quiet. My father's eyes widened. He realized what he had just said. So, the judge said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. You admit it. You wanted her calm before the hearing. You used a counterterrorism unit to manage a litigant in a civil trial. No, that is not what I meant, my father stammered. It is exactly what you said. The judge said. You admitted your motivation was the hearing, not the safety of the flight, not the safety of the passengers, the hearing. The judge picked up a document from his desk. I recognized it. It was the codicil. Mr. Gable, the judge said. Are you familiar with the doctrine of unclean hands? Yes, Your Honor. Gable whispered. It states that a party who seeks equity must do equity, the judge said. Your clients are asking me to hand them control of this estate. They are asking for equitable relief, yet their hands are so dirty I can smell them from here. The judge waved the codicil. This document, the judge said, contains a forfeiture clause. It says that if a beneficiary obstructs the process, they lose their share. We usually apply this to people who burn wills or hide assets, but I am looking at a man who tried to arrest the executor. He looked at my parents. If I rule that your actions constitute obstruction, the judge said, you do not just lose the right to be administrator, you lose your inheritance, all of it, the house, the accounts, the portfolio. It all goes to the Evelyn Vance Scholarship Fund. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. My father looked like he had been punched in the gut. I am not making that ruling this second, the judge said, because I want to be absolutely thorough. But the wind is blowing in a very specific direction. Mr. Mason, and it is blowing away from you. The judge turned to me. Ms. Mason, he said, the court recognizes the pattern of interference you described. It is compelling. It is substantiated by the evidence, and quite frankly, it is terrifying. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. However, the judge said, holding up a hand, the question remains, who should manage the assets while we litigate this mess? Mr. Gable argues that even if his clients are overzealous, they are the natural heirs. He argues that you, Ms. Mason, are hostile to them. I am hostile to fraud, Your Honor, I said, not to my family. A fine distinction, the judge said. But here is the reality. We have two wills. We have a decoy will that the parents found in the wall safe, and we have a mystery will that Ms. Mason claims is in a secure location. He looked at me intently. You mentioned in your email yesterday that you know where the true original will is, the judge said. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, I said. It is in a secure locker. I have the location and the code. And as this will differ significantly from the one your parents presented? It does, I said. The will my parents found leaves everything to them, the will in the locker. I believe it reflects the revocation my grandfather signed on the night he died. the revocation that my father tried to hide. "That is speculation," Gable shouted. "There is no proof of a revocation." "We have the police log," Marjorie cut in. The officer saw a folder labeled revocation in Mr. Mason's hand. "That is hearsay," Gable yelled. "It is enough for me," the judge said. He slammed his hand on the desk. "Here is what is going to happen. I am not giving this estate to the parents. I am not giving it to the daughter. Not yet." He pointed to the court clerk. "I am appointing a neutral third-party administrator from the county panel," the judge ordered. "They will take possession of the house keys today. They will secure the bank accounts today. Mr. and Mrs. Mason, you are ordered to surrender all access to the property immediately." "But, Your Honor," Gable started. "Sit down, counselor," the judge snapped. "Be glad I am not remanding your clients into custody for filing a false police report. That is a conversation for the district attorney, not me." The judge turned back to me. "Ms. Mason," he said, "you say you have the location of the true will?" "I do." "Then let us go get it," the judge said. "I am ordering a court-supervised retrieval. A sheriff's deputy will accompany you to this locker. You will retrieve the document and bring it directly to my chambers. We will open it together, all parties present." He looked at the clock. "We will reconvene at 2:00, the judge said. "If that document is what you say it is, this case is over. If it is not, well, then we have a very long trial ahead of us." "It is there," I said. "And the code works." "We shall see," the judge said. "Court is in recess." The gavel banged. My father slumped in his chair. He looked small. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow panic of a man who realizes he has gambled his entire life and lost. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for the first time in 20 years. He mouthed the word Yvette. I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I just looked at him with the same flat, objective gaze I used for a non-compliant audit file. He wasn't my father anymore. He was just a data point in a system that had finally corrected itself. "Let's go get the sheriff," Marjorie said, packing her bag. "We have a train station to visit." "Do you think he knows?" I asked, watching my father whisper frantically to his lawyer. "Knows what?" "That the code to the locker is the time he met my mother," I said. 1842, 6:42 p.m. "I doubt it," Marjorie said. "He probably doesn't even remember the year." "Grandpa remembered," I said. "He used their love story to lock away the money they loved more than him." We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright and noisy, filled with people dealing with traffic tickets and divorces. But for me, the noise faded. All I could hear was the ticking of a clock. The final countdown had begun. One locker, one envelope, and one last chance to see if the truth really could survive a lie. The clock on the wall of Department 4 read exactly 2:00 in the afternoon. The air in the courtroom had shifted. In the morning, it had been charged with the frantic energy of a skirmish, but now it held the heavy, suffocating silence of a final judgment. The sheriff's deputy had returned from the train station. He stood by the bailiff's desk, holding a large, sealed manila envelope. It was dirty, covered in the gray dust of a locker that hadn't been opened in years. To anyone else, it looked like trash. To me, it looked like the only thing in the world that mattered. Judge Holloway swept into the room. We all stood. He did not look at the lawyers. He did not look at the gallery. He looked straight at that envelope. "Be seated," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried a resonance that made the wood paneling vibrate. "We are back on the record in the matter of the estate of Arthur Vance. Before the recess, the court ordered the retrieval of a document from a secure location provided by the respondent. That document is now before the court." He pointed to the deputy. "Hand it over." The deputy walked the envelope to the bench. The sound of the paper sliding across the judge's mahogany desk was the loudest noise in the room. My father, Douglas, was staring at it. His face was pale, the color of old ash. He knew what was inside. He had to know. He had spent the last week trying to bury the truth, and now the truth had been dug up and placed right in front of him. "This envelope," the judge said, examining the seal. Is dated November 14th, 2024. It is sealed with tamper-evident tape. The seal is unbroken. He picked up a letter opener. Rip. He pulled out a thick stack of papers. He put on his reading glasses. He read in silence for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The waiting was agony. It was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I looked at Marjorie. She was perfectly still, her eyes locked on the judge's face, reading his micro-expressions like a fortune-teller reading tea leaves. Finally, the judge looked up. He took off his glasses. "We will get to the contents of this will in a moment," the judge said. "But first, we must address the conduct that brought us here today. A probate court is usually a place of dry arithmetic. We count assets, we divide by heirs, we subtract debts. But today, we are not just doing math. We are weighing credibility." He looked directly at my parents. "This morning," the judge continued, "Mr. Mason told this court that his daughter was taken away in handcuffs. He told this court that he acted out of concern for public safety. He told this court that he was a grieving father trying to protect a volatile child." The judge picked up the police incident report I had submitted earlier. "But the timeline," the judge said, "tells a different story, and the truth does not care for your dramatic interpretations." He nodded to Marjorie. "Ms. Klein, please summarize the chronology for the record one last time. I want it crystal clear." Marjorie stood up. She walked to the whiteboard easel set up near the jury box. She uncapped a black marker. She drew a single, straight horizontal line. "It is a straight line, Your Honor," Marjorie said, her voice sharp and clear. "It is the geometry of obstruction." She made a mark at the beginning of the line. 6:20 this morning, she said. "Douglas Mason calls airport police. He uses specific trigger words. Threat. Instability. To ensure a stop." She made a second mark. 7:10 this morning, she continued. "Douglas Mason, conspiring with Elena Mason, who provided the IP access, calls the airline. He impersonates the passenger. He cancels the ticket. This ensures that even if the police release her, the logistics will trap her." She made a third mark. 8:00 this morning, she said. "Mr. Gable files an emergency motion to move the hearing time up. This ensures that even if she fixes the ticket, she misses the gavel." She made a fourth mark. 8:30 this morning, she finished. "The petitioners file a sworn affidavit stating Yvette Mason is incarcerated. This ensures a default judgment." Marjorie capped the marker. The snap echoed in the room. "This is not the behavior of a concerned family," Marjorie said, turning to face my parents. "This is a military operation. This is a coordinated strike designed to eliminate a witness. The probability of these 4 events happening by accident, in this sequence, is 0. It is not a coincidence. It is a conspiracy." "Mr. Gable," the judge said, "do you have a response to this timeline?" Gable stood up. He looked tired. "Your Honor, my clients were under extreme emotional duress. They made errors in judgment, but they believed they were acting in the best interest of the estate." "Stop," the judge said. He did not shout. He just held up a hand. "Do not insult my intelligence by claiming that impersonating a passenger to cancel a flight is an error in judgment. That is fraud. That is a federal crime." The judge turned to me. "Ms. Mason, you have been the target of this operation. You were detained. You were stranded. You were slandered in open court. What do you have to say to your parents right now?" I stood up. I looked at them. My mother was crying into a tissue, a soft, weeping sound that I used to find comforting but now recognized as a manipulation tactic. My father was looking at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. I did not scream. I did not rage. I felt a strange, cold calm wash over me. "I do not have anything to say to them, Your Honor," I said. "I only have something to say to the record. I just wanted to be present. That is all I asked for, to sit in this room and hear my grandfather's wishes. but they wanted me to disappear, and the fact that they worked so hard to make me vanish tells me everything I need to know about what they are hiding." "Indeed," the judge said. "And that brings us to the final piece of evidence." He picked up the dispatch log from the night of the death, the one with the highlighted section I had saved for this exact moment. "Mr. Mason," the judge said, "you claimed earlier that the police report from the night your father died was hearsay and unverified. You claimed it was a chaotic scene." "It was," my father whispered. "Ms. Mason," the judge said to me, "please read the officer's supplemental note, the one from page 3, the one the petitioners seem to have overlooked." I picked up the paper. My hands were steady. I read the words that would cut the final thread of their deception. "Officer note," I read aloud. "Timestamp 0235, Subject 2, Douglas Mason, observed arguing with Subject 1, Arthur Vance. Subject 1 was heard shouting, 'I will not sign it. Get out of my house.' Subject 2 then physically blocked the doorway when officers attempted to enter. Subject 2 stated, 'This is a family matter. We do not need police.' Officer observed Subject 2 shoving a blue folder into his jacket. Subject 1 shouted, 'He is stealing the revocation. Stop him.' I lowered the paper. 'He is stealing the revocation,' I repeated. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning unit. "Mr. Mason," the judge said, "did you remove a document labeled revocation from the house that night?" "No," my father said, but his voice cracked. It was medical records. The officer was mistaken." "The officer was wearing a body camera," the judge said. "We can subpoena that footage. If I bring the video in here, and I see a blue folder, and I see you hiding it, are you prepared for the consequences?" My father didn't answer. He couldn't. He slumped forward, burying his face in his hands. It was an admission of guilt louder than any confession. My mother suddenly stood up. "We did it for him," she wailed. "Arthur was not thinking straight. He was going to give everything away to strangers. We had to protect the family legacy. We are the family. Yvette doesn't understand. We did it for her." "Sit down." The judge's voice cracked like a whip. "This court is not a stage, Mrs. Mason, and your emotions are not evidence. You did not do it for her. You did it to her." He looked at the papers from the locker again. "I am ready to rule," the judge said. He stacked the papers neatly. "First," the judge said, "regarding the petitioners, Douglas and Elena Mason, based on the overwhelming evidence of obstruction, fraud, and interference with the judicial process, I am finding that you have unclean hands. You are hereby removed as potential administrators of this estate. You are permanently enjoined from entering the property at 12 Oak Lane or accessing any financial accounts related to the decedent. Second," the judge continued, "regarding the will," he held up the dusty document from the locker. "This document is a valid last will and testament, dated November 14th, 2024. It explicitly revokes all prior wills, and it contains a specific clause regarding the distribution of assets." He looked at me. "Ms. Mason, your grandfather left you the house. He left you the contents of the safe deposit box, and he left you the majority of the liquid assets." I let out a breath. It wasn't about the money. It was about the validation. He had chosen me. "However," the judge said, "there is the matter of the codicil, the scholarship fund. The clause states that if any beneficiary obstructs the process, their share is forfeited to the Evelyn Vance Memorial Scholarship for Watchmakers." My father looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He thought maybe I would lose something too. "Mr. and Mrs. Mason," the judge said, "you are named as beneficiaries of a minor trust in this will, a maintenance fund. However, your actions today, the lies, the police calls, the flight cancellation, constitute obstruction under the definition of the codicil." The judge picked up a stamp. Clunk. "I am ruling that Douglas and Elena Mason have triggered the forfeiture clause. Your entire share of the estate is hereby stripped. It will be transferred immediately to the Evelyn Vance Memorial Scholarship Fund. You leave this courtroom with nothing, my mother screamed. It was a sharp, piercing sound. You cannot do that. That is millions of dollars. It is the cost of your arrogance, the judge said coldly. You tried to steal the whole pie, and now you don't even get a crumb. The watchmakers will be very grateful. Third, the judge said. Turning to the clerk, I am ordering the full preservation of these proceedings. I am forwarding the transcript, the police reports, and the airline logs to the district attorney's office for review regarding charges of filing a false police report, wire fraud, and perjury. He looked at Gable. And Counselor, I am referring your conduct to the state bar for review. Filing an affidavit of incarceration without verifying if your client's daughter was actually in jail is gross negligence at best and collusion at worst. Gable hung his head. Understood, Your Honor. Finally, the judge said, looking at me, I am appointing an independent fiduciary to manage the transition of assets, just to ensure there is no further drama. But Ms. Mason, you are the primary beneficiary. The house is yours. The history is yours. He took off his glasses. His eyes softened for the first time. Your grandfather wrote a note at the bottom of this will, the judge said. It says, for Yvette, because she knows how to tell the time. I assume that means something to you? It does, Your Honor, I said, my voice thick with tears. It means everything. Case closed, the judge said. Bang. The gavel came down one last time. It was the sound of a door locking on the past and a window opening to the future. My parents didn't move. They sat frozen in their chairs, stunned by the total devastation of their own making. They had walked in expecting to own the world, and they were walking out as potential felons with zero assets. I didn't stay to watch them crumble. I gathered my files, my precious, beautiful folder of evidence, and I turned my back on them. I walked down the center aisle of the courtroom. My boots clicked on the floor. A steady, rhythmic sound. Click, click, click. I pushed open the heavy double doors and stepped out into the hallway. Marjorie was waiting for me. She lit a cigarette. Ignoring the sign again, she smiled. You did good, kid, she said. We did good, I said. We walked out of the courthouse and into the afternoon sun. The light was blindingly bright. The air tasted sweet. I felt lighter. The weight of the last week, the grief, the fear, the anger, was lifting. I realized then that my grandfather hadn't just left me a fortune. He knew his son. He knew his daughter-in-law. He knew exactly what they would do when he died. He hadn't just left me money. He had left me a trap to catch them. He had left me the codes, the logs, and the legal mechanisms to let them destroy themselves. He knew I would be the one to spring it. He trusted me to be brave enough to get on the plane, to face the police, to walk into the courtroom. I took a deep breath. I was Yvette Mason. I was the granddaughter of a watchmaker, and I had finally set the time right. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call my job. I opened the email from Grandpa one last time, the one with the subject line, "For the day you need to be brave." I whispered to the screen, "I was brave. Grandpa, I was brave." The wind picked up, scattering the dry leaves on the sidewalk. I started walking toward the train station. I had a locker to clean out, and a life to start living. A life that, for the first time, was entirely, undeniably my own. Thank you so much for listening to this story about how Yvette fought back against a corrupt system and her own toxic family to uncover the truth. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I really want to connect with all of you. If you enjoyed this journey of justice, please subscribe to the Jane Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people who need to see the truth win.